experiment of this kind was one that we did at a national level with every child in America. And that was the American Rescue Plan in 2021 that Joe Biden passed that had this $3,000 a year child tax credit. Remember that? I mean, it just expired a couple months ago. I'm guessing, particularly if you have kids, you remember it. And what this did is it cut child poverty in the United States by more than half. We went from 12% of kids living in poverty to, I'm sorry, that was in Denver. We went from 12.2% of kids living in poverty in the United States to 5.4%. So what this shows is, and these universal basic income studies too, what they show over and over and over again is that if you give somebody $500, $1,000, $1,500 a month with no strings attached, the Republican prediction had always been, oh, they're going to go out and use that money to get high, or they're just going to become lazy, right? You give people free money, they turn into lazy slobs. They don't do anything. They just, you know, they sit around and eat bonbons while they're watching soap operas on TV. That's the Republican story about what happens with universal basic income. But now we've got study after study after study showing that no, when you lift people up above the poverty level to a certain threshold, which is basically the now I've got enough money to live a decent life. You know, the car isn't constantly breaking down, the rent can be paid, there's a table, you know, just the basic stuff. The high end of poverty, right? Or the low end of the American middle class or working class. That when you get people to that point, they take the next steps themselves. If you can give them, you know, I mean, there's one article that was in Business Insider that started out with the story of a woman who was getting $600 a month from, you know, one of these programs, I believe it was the Baltimore program, and she used that money to buy a car, which is what she needed to have a job. And then with the car and the job, suddenly she's able to provide for her 3 kids, and she's, you know, not on welfare anymore, and she's got a job, and she's doing good, all because of universal basic income, because something just lifted her above that ceiling, you know, it lifted her above the barrier to normal life that poverty presents. Now, this tells us a bunch of things. By the way, back to the child tax credit that Biden, you know, passed with the American Rescue Act in 2021. What that proves, well, and you know, first of all, it proved that you could reduce poverty in America by half. That poverty is just a choice in the United States. It proved that, number one. But number two, you know, what it proves is that there is a threshold someplace. Now, granted, those people are now back in poverty because the Republicans refused to renew that child tax credit. It was a big deal for them. They didn't want, you know, anybody, much less poor people, getting free government money that might be paid for with taxes from billionaires. The other thing that this experiment showed was that if you can get people up to a certain point, they will launch themselves into life, into good, productive, you know, life in America. Now, Republicans say, whoa, wait a minute, if you give people things, you know, for nothing, they don't value them. Well, you know, that might be true if you give somebody a fancy car as opposed to just a car. That might be true, you know, with your hobbies. If you know, parents buy kids expensive toys and hobbies constantly, that, you know, the kids just don't value them. Yeah, there's some truth to that. But there's no truth to it at all when it comes to basic income that is used to maintain a standard of living that's purely functional. You know, food, housing, these are necessities. You're going to value them no matter how you got them. And what this shows is how behind America is. We are the only country in the world, developed country in the world, that doesn't give everybody in our country health insurance or health care at a low cost, at an affordable rate. We are literally the only developed country in the world where 500,000 people lose their homes and declare bankruptcy every year because somebody got sick. It literally does not exist anywhere else in the developed world. Why? Because Republicans here in the United States have been telling us for decades now, all the way back to 1935 when they started telling us this about Social Security, that when you give somebody something for nothing, they don't value it, and it makes them lazy. They said this about Social Security. They said this about Medicare. They said this about Obamacare. Remember that back in 2010, all those, you know, the Tea Party and all the ads and everything else? They said this about Medicaid. They said this about food stamps. They said this about Section 8 housing. They said this about free college. They said this about, you know, good quality primary education. Republicans have said this, oh, you can't give people things for free because it makes them lazy. They've said this about pretty much any program that helps average working people. And they know they're lying. How do I know that Republicans know that they're lying? Because if they really and truly believed that giving people something for nothing makes them lazy, damages them, hurts them, which is what they've been preaching to us for since 1935, for 80 years now. If they really believed that, then the Republicans would be at the front of the line arguing for a 100% inheritance tax so that we didn't inflict a fate worse than death, being turned into a lazy person on the children of wealthy people. If the billionaires who run and own the Republican Party actually believed that giving people something for nothing was a bad thing, was a destructive thing, shattered the human experience, destroyed the human spirit, de-incentivized or disincentivized people from work, if they really and truly believed that, none of them would be passing their wealth to their kids. But instead, all of them are passing their wealth to their kids because they all know it's a lie. They know that the Republicans have been lying about this forever. So what do? We've got these programs that are incredibly successful and that can solve poverty in the United States. It doesn't have to be universal basic income. There's a dozen different ways to get people up above poverty. You can do it with minimum wage laws. You can do it with widespread unionization. You've got European countries where 70, 80, 90% of the population, the working population, is in a union. And they pretty much don't have poverty or homelessness. There's a bunch of different ways we can do this. We can, you know, as I said, there's the whole social safety net. There are tax credits. I mean, we did this with kids, right? With the child tax credit, unionization, government programs keyed to food stamps. We could expand those. We could expand government subsidized housing. In some countries, like in Austria, I think about a third of the housing now in Vienna is government subsidized. They're doing just fine, thank you very much. It's not making Austrians lazy. Unemployment benefits so that people don't fall through the cracks. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this. But the bottom line is these experiments. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by... Well, we're moving along with the pledge drive. Things seem to be going well. You know, knock wood. It's always tough in the beginning, and you know, I know that we're a little behind where we like to be, but we're, you know, people are responding, and I'm very grateful to that. I don't yet have the votes in on the clips. Do you want clips during these fundraising pledges, or would you rather just hear me blither on about, or talk? You know, I shouldn't use pejoratives. You know, talk about free speech TV. I mean, I think we all know how cool free speech TV is and how important it is. So the clip I have for you today, and then, you know, tomorrow we'll assess these and decide whether to continue doing them, is just a little over 2 minutes. It's from Dwight Eisenhower's December 1960 farewell address to the nation, or maybe it was in January of 61. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it was his farewell address. His famous military-industrial complex speech. Here it is.
Or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Isn't that remarkable? They just don't talk like that anymore. Anyway, today is day 2, or day 3, I guess. It's Wednesday of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive. It only lasts 2 weeks, very truncated, very short. With the $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With the $50 gift, you've got your choice of the very cool Free Speech TV keychain or the tote bag. With a $120, excuse me, with a $75 gift, there's the Free Speech TV mug. The $120 gift, you have your choice, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author. That would be me. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV blanket. And with a $1,000 gift, you can get all 9 books so far, autographed by the author of the Hidden History series, which makes just a dynamite gift, or, you know, looks really cool on your shelf. Or sign up for the meet and greet here once we finally figure out how to do those things. We're still a little nervous. All that said, Free Speech TV is a vital and important resource for frankly, all of us, I think, you know, for our nation. It's critical that people be well informed. Some comments that people have made as they've called in or left comments over at freespeech.org. The number, of course, to call in 877-378-8669. Some of the comments, Charles in Illinois, he said he would probably still be in college if he had professors like Thom Hartmann who had a gift for teaching. Well, thank you, Charles. Anthony in Texas said, I'm so fascinated by Thom Hartmann and proud y'all have this network. I mostly watch left-wing TV and really delighted that I found Free Speech TV. It's quite a contribution to America. I agree. Not so much about me, but, you know, Free Speech TV is a contribution to America. It's true. Janice in Washington said, I've been a loyal watcher for some time. I will catch Tom and Randy. You know, Randy and I used to be on Air America together, and I love Randy. She's brilliant. She's a great colleague. When I turn on in fact, I introduced her to Free Speech TV. When I turn on my TV, it's always on Free Speech TV. I like the ads where you talk about free speech. They're very charming, writes Janice in Washington. Massachusetts said, Thom Hartmann has a wonderful knowledge, and I'm amazed when I learned from him so much we don't hear from the mainstream media. He's a reliable resource, and I'm glad I found it. And William in Illinois says, we feel Thom Hartmann is very knowledgeable about history, and I feel it's the best place to make our donation. Tim in Wisconsin, Free Speech TV is vital, important, and should be supported. Amen. So please, right now, go to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution, whether it's ongoing support every single month or a one-time gift. Please do it now.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Wednesday. We got a lot to talk about today in the first hour of our program. Congressman Mark Pocan will be with us in just a moment, taking your calls for the entire hour in a National Progressive Town Hall meeting, Middays with Mark. The number, if you want to call Congressman Pocan, is 202-808-9925. I'll introduce him appropriately in just a moment. In the second hour of our program, has corporate personhood delivered America to the brink of dictatorship? You betcha. Also, Speaker MAGA Mike appears to want to tamper with evidence. Why isn't this a bigger scandal? Liz Cheney has named a key Trump mastermind with probably a lot to hide, she says, which is why he and others are refusing to answer subpoenas and trying to accuse Biden of everything in sight to change the subject. We'll talk about that in the second hour. In the third hour of our program, Dr. David Pepper is going to be with us, the damning timeline of Ohio's biggest Republican bribery scandal. Also, they're going to throw media in prison. Yeah, Kash Patel and Steve Bannon talking about that this morning. We'll talk about that in the third hour of the program. He says, we will find the conspirators in government and media. Yes, we are going to come after the people in the media. Why isn't the media talking about this? And is Facebook buying influence in the third hour of the program? I wanted to also start by just, mourning, essentially, the loss of a friend of mine. Louise and I have stayed at his home. In fact, at his home in Los Angeles, and we've stayed in his home in Vermont. We've known Norman and Lynn Lear for years. I posted a picture of Norman on my Twitter feed of him and me. It's a real loss, I think, for America. I love Norman Lear, and his work with the People for the American Way was just absolutely extraordinary. So, all that said, today is it's Wednesday. It's Middays with Mark. So Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour. He's the current member and chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He's the co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus and chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus. He represents Wisconsin's 2nd District in the U.S. House. Pocan.house.gov is his website. His Twitter handle is Rep. Mark Pocan. Congressman, welcome back. Kevin McCarthy has pulled the plug, and it seems like you guys only have a couple of days between now and the time he's going to leave at the end of this month because of the long holiday, right?
Well, and Republicans don't know, Tom, how to govern, period, right? I mean, we were here from the August break for 10 straight weeks up to Thanksgiving week. 4 of those weeks we were supposed to be home. We couldn't because they couldn't elect a speaker for part of it, and part of it was doing appropriation bills that, by the way, we never passed the bills. We just did amendments on them. So we haven't passed appropriation bills. We punted on the farm bill. We still haven't done the FAA authorization. Maybe the national defense authorization may come next week. We haven't funded Ukraine or anything else, but we're going to do another censure resolution this week. And we're doing all kinds of other silly things because they can't govern. And now if they lose Kevin McCarthy and one other member is expected to retire before the end of the year because they've already announced they've taken a new job, Republicans are going to be down to a 1-seat majority. Whoa. And Marjorie Taylor Greene put out a tweet today basically saying, hope no one dies.
Incredible.
Yeah, this is like a bad novel, right?
Yeah.
Unfolding in front of the American people.
Yeah, it really is. And Kevin could have waited, Kevin McCarthy, he could have waited until the end of the year, until his term was out. It almost seems like he's trying to stick it to Mike Johnson because now Gavin Newsom has to call for a special election. He has up to 3 months to do that. I would say that he would probably be invested in procrastinating as long as possible because that's one fewer Republican vote in the House. McCarthy had to be thinking of that when he decided to pull the plug at the end of this month rather than, next June or next September or even, at the end of next year when his term, expired and he would have had to run for re-election.
Yeah, I think they need to create something that's the opposite of profiles and courage, because Kevin McCarthy needs a place to be immortalized. He's the one who largely caused this dysfunction by changing all the rules to become speaker. Right. The crazies still bit him in the behind, and now he is leaving, I think, in a kind of FU sort of way to his caucus. But, really it's an FU to the country, because we're all living through us not being able to govern and get even the 101s of Congress, our budgeting done. And instead, all we can do are censorship resolutions and gotcha resolutions. And, Kevin McCarthy created all of this, and he will go down in history for being that pathetic. Yeah.
My last question here, host's privilege. This morning, Merrick Garland, our Attorney General, announced the prosecution of 4 Russians, 2 commanders and 2 soldiers, for committing war crimes in Ukraine against an American citizen who was in Ukraine, and pretty horrific stuff. That was announced just before Joe Biden. I don't know if he started the speech or if he's about to start the speech, but he's going to be giving a speech pitching his aid to Ukraine package. Ukraine has just vanished from the national media for the last few weeks, and it's not that they can't, walk and chew gum at the same time. They could be covering Ukraine and Israel. It almost seems to me like the media and the Republican establishment have gotten together and said, we're just going to let them die. I don't get it. Do you have any insights into what's going on and how your colleagues are thinking on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear the Republicans have decided this is an issue that Donald Trump doesn't care about, therefore they're not going to care about because they do what Donald Trump wants. And, we're expecting something to come from the Senate next week, hopefully, on the security supplemental that would include funding for Ukraine. But, they had a briefing this week also on Ukraine. I think it's they're trying to make it relevant again to some of the Republicans who maybe are the more reasonable Republicans, rather than, the extremists who are like, they prefer Vladimir Putin, and they've often sometimes said that. But you're right. I mean, you don't hear about it. And, out of sight, out of mind for many. And I think that's the intent of Donald Trump.
Yeah. I mean, there's been all this stuff about the rapes by Hamas, which are absolutely horrible and they need to be prosecuted. But rape as a weapon of war was also used by the Russians. And I was surprised that there wasn't at least a mention of that in passing or something. I guess, each conflict deserves to be dealt with on its own. But, they're both, major issues that we are deeply involved in and that there's a big debate about our going forward. Anyhow, let's pick up calls, all right? Sure. It's Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
I would like to ask a question about a federal law that I would like to see proposed, and maybe your thoughts about its constitutionality. I think it'd be constitutional that if we had a federal law that says a person is not legally a candidate for federal office until they actually appear on a ballot for that office in at least one state. I'm running for office. I filed the. It's just ridiculous. Many people don't. At least 8 Republicans don't think that Donald Trump is going to be the nominee. This presumption, this pussyfooting around and deference that the courts are paying to his free speech and not interfering with the election. He is not. I mean, private polls might say he's the presumptive nominee, but if that's not legal. I think that we need a law that says legally you're not a candidate for the office, and that would not include a primary, because a primary is not an election for the office itself.
Yeah, well, Paul, I mean, I could see a few problems with that. I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I think, first of all, we have all different dates for primaries. So in what states do you have to qualify in? Some states are as simple as paying a check to get on a ballot, depending what office you're going for. Others require a pretty significant signature amount. I know what you're trying to do. I understand it. But, I think you just got to admit Donald Trump is right now, by every metric, the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party, even though a primary has not happened yet. And the media in a 24/7 news cycle want to get it first, not right, are going to cover Donald Trump. Plus, he's colorful for them, right? I mean, you sell more detergent when Donald Trump's on TV than Nikki Haley. So unfortunately, they helped make them 4 years ago, and I think they're doing it all over again.
Bill in Richmond, Virginia, our favorite Republican propagandist. Bill, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank goodness in Virginia you don't have to register for either party, so I can say totally independent.
Okay.
But the question I have, though, is this, and I haven't heard anything said about today, but I listened yesterday on C-SPAN to the congressional hearing from the 8 Ivy League presidents on this topic of anti-Semitism. And I'll be honest, when I listened to them talk, I really couldn't believe what they were saying, or more importantly, what they weren't saying. And, if you're going to take some of the top educational institutions in this country, and they seem to have this kind of oblique stand on anti-Semitism, my question would be if the same thing came up and if it was, say, anti-black or anti-Latino or if it was anti-gay, would the coverage be the same thing? Because it sounds like that I heard one of, I think it's the president of UPenn, said that it would be considered, in their estimation, anti-Semitism once there was genocide attempted.
Yikes.
And I'm going,
Bill, we're getting up against a break here, Bill, so let's get the answer here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you the thing I think I'd like to point out. I mean, first of all, I think most every reasonable person is against anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, sexism. I mean, go down the list, right? People values in every single metric we have. People have values that are trying to be inclusive. When it comes to anti-Semitism, though, the Republicans had a resolution just yesterday. For the first time ever, they tried to make it not bipartisan. They put this thing out. They added a line about Zionism as anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, and they basically are using the Jewish community to do gotcha votes. And that's my real problem with what I'm seeing. I mean, we should always call out. I had neo-Nazis in Madison, Wisconsin, Tom, and we called it out, as did many other people in both parties, as they should. But we shouldn't use anti-Semitism as a political club. And right now, the House Republicans are trying to do that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Congressman Mark Pocan, Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, is with us for the hour taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. 17 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan right after this. You can find his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. And welcome back. Tom in Irvine, California. You are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hi, Congressman Pocan. Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Congressman Pocan, thank you for being part of the Free Thought Caucus. Mm-hmm. And every Sunday morning out here in LA, there's a show on TV from the Freedom from Religion Foundation called Free Thought Matters, and they mentioned your name a few times. I guess Dan Barker and Annie Laurie Gaylor, you're their representative. And
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago, they had a guest on, or it was actually a couple months ago, Mary Jo McConaughey, and she wrote a book called Playing God about the merger of the American Catholic bishops with the right-wing evangelicals. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. And then also, is there any chance of the Free Thought Caucus expanding beyond its current 19 members?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm not familiar with the book, so I'll check that out. Very proud to have Freedom from Religion based in my district for a long, long time. In fact, right now we're trying to get Dan to be the person who gives the invocation under the rules that we have in the House, and we're going to see if we're successful in that. But, we'd love to have him be able to do it from the perspective of people who are non-believers in this country. Specifically on the caucus itself, I think we might have 20 members now, to be honest. But with the new speaker, we have a lot more work to do with Mike Johnson, right? This is someone who is a religious ideologue. He has a flag outside that's a Christian nationalist flag, among other flags outside of his office. And, that should be disturbing to everyone. So, you can be someone of faith and still respect the separation of religion and state. And I think that's what, why we have 20 members, but why we should also have more people speaking out and joining our caucus. So thanks for watching that, and thanks for calling out a good group like Freedom from Religion.
That's great. I had no idea. It is a great group. Alfredo in Mountain View, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, thank you both for making yourselves available. My question is, can we have international observers to ensure that we're going to have fair elections? And also, if you remember, during the Kennedy administration, Kennedy deployed the military to ensure that segregated schools were going to be integrated again. Can Joe Biden deploy the military in areas where voting is a problem to ensure that the voters will not be intimidated? And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you much.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the second part, Alfredo, but on the first part, we don't necessarily need international observers. But we do need observers. I agree, and I think you can have plenty of people from both parties, like in the state of Wisconsin, who can observe. But we do want to make sure that the elections are run fair and freely, and part of it is going after these states that have made it harder for some people to be able to vote, and oftentimes it's really long lines that are cumbersome, and they purposely do it in certain neighborhoods. And now is the time to try to be addressing those so that by next November, hopefully we're in the best place possible. Don't know if it requires international observers. It certainly does require observers, and if people can take off Election Day to do that in their communities, it would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think the big difference to his second question is that we have an explicit right against being discriminated against. It's both in the Constitution and in multiple federal laws. There is no explicit right to vote. In fact, in Bush v. Gore, Rehnquist wrote that there is no explicit right to vote for President of the United States in the Constitution. I think he's wrong. The phrase "right to vote" appears 3 times in the Constitution, but that's the position of the law right now. It's 22 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically, just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. It's Middays with Mark. Bill in Illinois. Hey, Bill, you're on the air.
Yes. I would like to know what's being done to protect original Medicare, because I'm 77. I'm on Medicare A and B with supplemental through AARP. 3 years ago, while on my bicycle, I hit by a car, spent a few days in the hospital, and then a month in a nursing home. And since then, I've had other issues. And Medicare and the supplemental paid for everything. And my former employer, the place I retired from, AT&T, and the UHC, tried to put me on Medicare Disadvantage. And I had to call them to disenroll, and they'd call Medicare to make sure that I'm on A and B. I'd like to know what's being done to protect the original Medicare.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Bill. Thanks to Tom's program and listeners on Tom's program, many of us are doing a lot more on Medicare Advantage. Ro Khanna, myself, and Jan Schakowsky have introduced a bill to say that you can't use Medicare in your name. You can be Blue Cross Blue Shield Advantage, you can be Humana Advantage, but it's a private insurance program. It shouldn't be called Medicare. Their lobbyists were very smart when they created that. But really, we're trying to get the word out about the $140 billion in overpayments just last year alone that they intentionally overcharged. The fact that if you're not in network, you may not get care. The fact that they turned down well over 1 million different people's requests for medical care a year, of which when they get appealed, 81%, Tom, are overturned. So they're clearly just rejecting things out of hand that you don't get rejected under Medicare, but you do under Medicare Advantage just to save money. But that costs lives, especially in people's older years. There's a whole lot we're trying to do to expose Medicare Advantage for what they are. And we've now got a consortium of groups on the outside that are working on it, as well as members. And I think you're going to hear a lot more of it. Tomorrow is the last day you'll see all those commercials you're bombarded with, because the last day for enrollment is December 7th. But we're going to do everything we can over the next year to continue to do this. We've had talks. We've got some other ideas we're working on, but we just need to get the word out that only Medicare is Medicare, and that's going to be in the best interest of most people. Amen.
By the way, we had a caller just a little bit ago about, why couldn't the president send out to protect the vote? And I said because, he could defend civil rights because that's a right, but not the vote because that's not a right. And it reminded me that in my op-ed yesterday at Hartmann Report, I cited you as the author of a constitutional amendment to establish an affirmative right to vote. We have about 20 seconds before the hard break here. You want to riff on that?
Sure. And the reason we did is everyone assumes it's in there. In fact, when you become a citizen, there's a question about it that's wrong, that says that's your most important right as an American. Yet there's not an explicit right, as you said, for legal reasons. So by having a constitutional amendment, it would make it an explicit right. And then you'd have to prove you're not harming someone when you do these changes, as opposed to now you have to prove you've been harmed by an election law change. And it really would turn the entire fight upside down.
Yeah, it would completely change it would blow up the Republican strategy, basically, their whole voter suppression strategy. And good on you for proposing that. I hope you continue. Congressman thank you. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us, the Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, a member in good stand. Your calls for him in this hour, Middays with Mark, right after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Right back on the other side of this break with Congressman Mark Pocan, answering your questions, taking your thoughts.
Is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, we're moving along with the pledge drive. Things seem to be going well. Knock wood. It's always tough in the beginning, and I know that we're a little behind where we like to be, but we're people are responding, and I'm very grateful to that. I don't yet have the votes in on the clips. Do you want clips during these fundraising pledges, or would you rather just hear me blither on about, or talk? I shouldn't use pejoratives. Talk about free speech TV. I mean, I think we all know how cool free speech TV is and how important it is. So the clip I have for you today, and then, tomorrow we'll assess these and decide whether to continue doing them, is just a little over 2 minutes. It's from Dwight Eisenhower's December 1960 farewell address to the nation. Or maybe it was in January of '61. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it was his farewell address, his famous military-industrial complex speech. Here it is.
Or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Isn't that remarkable? They just don't talk like that anymore. Anyway, today is day 2 or day 3, I guess. It's Wednesday of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive. It only lasts 2 weeks, very truncated, very short. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, you've got your choice of the very cool Free Speech TV keychain or the tote bag. With a $120, excuse me, with a $75 gift, there's the Free Speech TV mug. The $120 gift, you have your choice, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author. That would be me. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV blanket. And with a $1,000 gift, you can get all 9 books so far, autographed by the author of the Hidden History series, which makes just a dynamite gift, or, you know, looks really cool on your shelf. Or sign up for the meet and greet here once we finally figure out how to do those things. We're still a little nervous. All that said, Free Speech TV is a vital and important resource for frankly, all of us. I think, you know, for our nation, it's critical that people be well informed. Some comments that people have made as they've called in or left comments over at freespeech.org. The number, of course, to call in 877-378-8669. Some of the comments, Charles in Illinois, he said he would probably still be in college if he had professors like Thom Hartmann who had a gift for teaching. Well, thank you, Charles. Anthony in Texas said, I'm so fascinated by Thom Hartmann and proud y'all have this network. I mostly watch left-wing TV and really delighted that I found Free Speech TV. It's quite a contribution to America. I agree, not so much about me, but you know, Free Speech TV is a contribution to America. It's true. Janice in Washington said, I've been a loyal watcher for some time. I would catch Tom and Randy. You know, Randy and I used to be on Air America together, and I love Randy. She's brilliant. She's a great colleague. When I turn on in fact, I introduced her to Free Speech TV. When I turn on my TV, it's always on Free Speech TV. I like the ads where you talk about free speech. They're very charming, writes Janice in Washington. Margaret in Massachusetts said, Thom Hartmann has a wonderful knowledge, and I'm amazed what I learned from him. So much we don't hear from the mainstream media. He's a reliable resource, and I'm glad I found it. And William in Illinois says, we feel Thom Hartmann is very knowledgeable about history, and I feel it's the best place to make our donation. Tim in Wisconsin, Free Speech TV is vital, important, and should be supported. Amen. So please, right now, go to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Whether it's ongoing support every single month or a one-time gift, please do it now. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. And welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls, Middays with Mark, and Rhonda in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Rhonda, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. I am so appreciative of the conversation today. One of the things that occurs to me is that, you know, my sister told me years ago, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And the GOP is clearly the brokest party there could ever be, but where they seem to be winning is on understanding that messaging, that people accept messaging because it's very emotional for them. And I feel often that the Democrats are waiting around for people. I'm sorry, my doctor's closing the door. Are waiting around for people's intellect to kick in to see that we're right, and people don't come at this from an intellectual standpoint. They come at it from an emotional standpoint. And I'm just wondering if there's any discussions or any thoughts in terms of messaging, in terms of tactic, within the Democratic Party to really start to integrate and understand that, because clearly we're on the side of the people. Clearly we know, we're listening to them and doing what's right. But for some reason, there should never have been the number of votes for Trump in the GOP that there were. There just shouldn't. And so I just feel like sometimes where we're losing ground is messaging. The fact that people don't really understand how much has been accomplished.
Okay, let's get a response here, Rhonda. Thank you.
Yeah, Rhonda, you're right. And fortunately, just this morning, Hakeem Jeffries at a whip meeting said something that I've heard Nancy Pelosi say when she was leader, but he did a really great job this morning in talking about why we need to talk about values. Values unite, issues divide. When you actually talk about values, the American people agree with the vast majority of the values of Democrats. Equal treatment under the law, everyone should have opportunities, go down the list. And when we talk about those values, people do connect with us. It's then when you get to exact pieces of legislation, the special interests and the Republicans manipulate what those issues are. It's kind of why, people liked the Affordable Care Act but hated Obamacare when they're identical, same thing. But talking about values specifically is always, I think, the best way to get our ideas across. And the more we do that, you're right, the more successful we can be.
Could you give me a couple examples?
I think, this morning we were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Remember, Republicans across the country are going after that. But when polls have been done around treatment of people, up to 67% of Republicans agreed that, much of what is happening under diversity, equity, inclusion is the right thing to do so that everyone is treated fairly. So again, when you talk about fair treatment under the law, everyone deserves opportunity, vast majority of people, including Republicans, agree with you. But then when you get to, they get that little diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, or CR, what was the other CR or whatever training, another fake thing that people put out there, then suddenly they have a different feeling because Republicans have been good at making you think something is evil, even though it doesn't align with your values. Right. So we just need to lead more, and I think we're better off.
Yeah, FDR certainly did a great job of that, by the way. Ed in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
No, this is a perfect follow-up call to the previous caller. My question is that who should we be contacting in the Democratic Party about messaging? Because I got to tell you, I will forever believe that in the midterms, if the Democratic Party had given equal weight to the Republicans openly talking about getting rid of Social Security as we did to abortion, that we would have held on to the House. But the Democratic Party just took that political gift from Republicans and flushed it down the toilet. So what organizations or what people do you recommend that we contact in the Democratic Party about messaging?
Yeah. First, Ed, I agree with you. I think we didn't play Social Security the way we should have. It's clear Republicans want to dismantle it in its current form. And that's our money we've paid into. It's one of the most popular programs, that Medicare we offer. And we should have also talked about that. You're right. Having said that, I think, reaching out to your elected Democratic officials to make sure that we're talking about it in our sets of meetings. It's not like there's a single place that, 335 million people can call to don't have a good answer for you on that. But through your elected officials, often they are at the tables where these conversations are happening. The more people do that, I do think it can help propel that. But I'm with you. I still think, in fact, in the next election cycle, we should still be talking about Social Security. We just saw Mike Johnson make some comments about it again in the last maybe a month ago. This is on their agenda, and we need to expose them for what they're really standing for.
Phil in Aurora, South Dakota, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, on this, they want more aid for Ukraine. Where do they keep coming up with the money for it? And are we the only Christian nation helping out over there?
Yeah, I mean, there's other, I think, NATO allies and other countries also helping out. You know, the way I look at it, my standard always is I want to have a very high threshold when we're going to send American men and women into combat, right? Because I think the valuing life at that level has to be one of the most important decisions we make. I would much rather not send people to conflicts, whether it be there or other places. And if we can provide support to someone who has been invaded by another country, which is what Russia did, that is the better way to go forward. So, you know, honestly, I look at it as a small amount of money compared to what we could be spending if we don't do it. And I think, you know, continued support is important.
Hank in Tomahawk, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for taking my call, and greetings from the great seventh. You can find somebody else to put in there to represent us. But anyway, that's not what I'm calling up. I've been watching your actions or your work on trying.
Hank, I just lost you. I don't know if you accidentally hit the mute button, but check it real quick. We have lost Hank. All right. I'm sorry, Hank. You'll have to call back. Todd in Minneapolis. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thanks for taking the call, Tom, and Congressman, thanks for your time. Congressman, I recently saw some clips from a congressional hearing where Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, was being questioned by members of Congress. And he was being asked just some absurd questions from some Republican members. One in particular caught my mind. He showed some video of buses unloading at the Capitol on January the 6th, and he was being accused of those buses being sent there by the FBI and loaded with members of the FBI disguised as Trump supporters. And we know that's absurd, but my question is, why does he have to sit respectfully and answer respectfully when such absurd questions and straight-up lies are being asked? I know there's Senate decorum and congressional decorum, but does decorum help when you're not putting down a direct falsehood?
Yeah, Todd, I'll tell you, I think I'm a believer in the American people are smarter than the Republicans think they are. And, you know, when you show respect for our country, even when they ask the dumbest of questions, which they do, people get that those are dumb questions, and they respect someone who still shows respect for the country in how they handle it. So, you know, I'm fine with how he and others, I think, respond. I think what's so interesting is exactly what you're saying, though, this new spin of what happened on January 6th, claiming it's, you know, somehow feds involved and they brought busloads in. Tom, the most recent one is our good friend John Nichols from The Nation magazine. They're now claiming is one of the people. They have a picture of a guy who they're claiming incited violence, and they're saying it was a left-wing journalist, John Nichols.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and John is a brilliant journalist, by the way. He's a really good guy.
And the fact that they're going to that level to try to make up their, you know what? I say give them the rope, because I do think people are smarter, and at the end of the day, they're not going to win on this. But, you know, I try to show respect where I can. Trust me, you have no idea how hard it is when Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert or Matt Gaetz or a few of these other people speak. It's hard, but yeah. I still think we're better doing it.
There you go. Jim in Mobile, Alabama, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Great show today, guys. My question is this. The GOP claims to be the anti-abortion party. They want America's children to live long enough to die in the hail of bullets from AR-15s and soon JR-15s in grade school. They suggest selling weapons to teachers to create more gun sales and ammo sales. They want to kill a lot of children. And I remember Jim Santorum suggesting that the students concerned about gun violence in schools should learn first aid and stop telling the lawmakers how to solve the problem.
Yeah, Jim, I'll tell you, when it comes to special interests in Washington, there's no one better than the Republican Party to genuflect and do whatever they're told to do. For the gun lobby, because the NRA is not, gun owners, it's gun manufacturers who are just trying to make corporate profits, and they're okay with, the deaths that occur because of their products and without any regulation and check on that. And the same is true on abortion. It's the special interests that they're busy kowtowing to who help them on the campaign front, rather than respecting what the majority of people in this country support, which is a freedom to make decisions over their own bodies with their own families and medical personnel. So it's just the Republican Party these days, but I think they get exposed for it.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour, Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Pocan.house.gov. You can find his website, and Rep. Mark Pocan on Twitter. We'll be right back. Yeah, I'm still calling it Twitter. We'll be right back. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
Right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. And welcome back. James in Hollywood, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Congressman, I am so tired of Republicans beating you and Dems up over border security and immigration and fentanyl. I'm telling you and your comrades, draft a bill to make it a crime to possess more than 3 match heads of fentanyl. You shall be charged with attempted murder and or attempted suicide. And as far as the immigration goes, you have a bill to reform it. They don't have anything. It's the Republican billionaires that want chaos at the border, that want everyone in. But Dems got to scream from the rooftop. What say you, Congressman?
Yeah, James, I'll tell you, I think the best way to put it is it really is on Congress. We have to pass laws to change it right now, because we have not addressed it for a couple decades. It is a broken immigration system. Asylum is one of the few ways people can get in, and it may not be the right way for many of the people, but it's the only way. And because we don't fund it, the backlogs can be 7 years before you actually go before a trial to see if you can stay in this country. And we don't fund the local communities trying to address all this. It's a mess at every level because of what the federal government isn't doing, and that is on Congress specifically. And you're right, Republicans don't have an answer. They just want to complain about it.
Dave in Brooksville, Florida, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, I'd like to preface my remark and question to Mark first by saying I have a lot of respect for you, Tom, not because I agree with everything that you say, but because you're the only host out there on the radio with any guts. Now, I know you have to tread a fine line, and it gets sketchy for you whenever you provide an unbiased forum, especially when it comes to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And regardless of where you come down on that, I'd like to ask Mark about the intimidation and pressure he and his fellow Congress people endure when it comes to accusations of anti-Semitism. Contrary to a lot of beliefs, anti-Semitism is a misnomer. The fact is, Palestinians are also Semitic. Besides
we got your question, Dave. We're up against a break here. Let's get the response.
Yeah, Dave, there's no question. Republicans have even politicized anti-Semitism. Yesterday, we had a resolution, and first time they didn't try to make it bipartisan. We've already done one about a month ago, by the way. And they even said that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. They don't even know what they're saying. Look, I'll believe them on anti-Semitism when they put a measure forward to censure Marjorie Taylor Greene for her Jewish space lasers setting forest fires.
The Texas GOP just refused to say that they won't accept, Nazis.
Yeah, they are complete hypocrites on this issue. And in that resolution yesterday, they're trying to use the Jewish community as pawns in all of this. And I find that over the top as well. So, Dave's right. Unfortunately, using this as a political issue, this should be a unifying issue. We don't want hate towards anyone. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, sexism, homophobia, go down the list. But Republicans are trying to use it as a political tool, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, amen. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. Middays with Mark. You can find his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at rep or x him or whatever at rep Mark. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? X him at rep Mark Pocan. We'll be back with more of your calls for the Chair Emeritus, the former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, now a member in good standing, Congressman Mark Pocan. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government and military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. Picking up your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan. Anthony in Albany, New York. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hey, good afternoon, Congressman. Thanks for being available for us. My question also relates to immigration, and I live in a community that we've accepted a lot of people, especially at a time where there's already a lot of stress placed on our housing, medical, education, et cetera, et cetera. While there's a lot of numbers out there of how many people are entering our country every year, anywhere from about 750,000 to up to 2 million a year, is there a threshold that we should be concerned about relative to the amount of people that can come here before it's not sustainable and services not being available for anybody at a certain point? Or can we just keep this unfettered approach of just, opening our doors to, for people across the world to come in?
Yeah, Anthony, I think you're asking a fair question in that if Congress doesn't act and address the laws around immigration, we don't really have checks and balances, right? The only way people can kind of claim a way to come in is to claim asylum, and that's often not the right way. And there are other legitimate ways to come here, and there's ways that we're not going to allow people in, but we don't have that in place right now because of Congress being inactive in defining this area. So I don't have a great answer for you on what's the magic number, other than the magic is make sure you have laws in place that we currently don't have in place because Congress simply doesn't act. I think the Republicans are fine with the dysfunction that's out there, so they can point out the dysfunction, but they're also the ones that are directly responsible for not fixing it.
Morris in Long Beach, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, good morning to everyone within the sound of my voice. We have school shootings every day now in America. School shootings every day in America. My daughter had one the other day. There was a couple of them back to back at Union High School. So that's part of our we're just doing school shootings every day, everybody. Address that. And Congressman, I think you need to let Jack Smith know that Mike Johnson is talking about he does not want the Department of Justice to prosecute at minimum the trespassers that participated in January 6th. This guy's the new David Duke. He's calm, non-emotional, but he's lethal. But anyway, I don't know if you're familiar with what Mr. Johnson said, the Speaker of the House, that he does not want the Department of Justice to prosecute anyone that was participating in January. So he's going to cover the shots, the mug shots, so they can't be seen. So I want to know what your opinion is on that. And secondly, I always got a compound question. And secondly, did the Progressive Caucus, did they stand with AOC, Omar, and Rashida Tlaib when Ms. Tlaib was talking about funding for Israel? I'll take the comments off the air. Thank you, Tom.
Morris, I'm not sure if I understand your second question. So I'm sorry you didn't give me enough information to actually know what I was going to be talking about. On the first question, give me a refresher, Tom. I apologize.
It was the Speaker of the House saying that he's going to blur out the faces.
Completely ridiculous. You're going to let out the video, but blur the faces. Like, what's the purpose of doing that?
It's to stop citizens. There's these great citizen groups that have identified almost half of all the people who have been identified. That's what he's trying to blow up.
Why would you release the video then? For what purpose? Obviously, then you're going to cover the faces. I mean, this is just, again, Republicans playing off of their inner politics rather than anything that makes sense.
Yeah, they're conspiracy nut stuff. Okay. Steve, in New Boston, Michigan, you're on the air with Representative Pocan. Steve?
Matt, please be aware of this. Every day I get a call from a John who claims to be from the Affordable Care Act, and I know he's not. And these calls come to me from a different state every time, but it's the same guy. And as soon as I call him out and being a scam, he wants to hang up, or he does. He hangs the phone up on me, which is fine. But also, they have your name. He has my name, and he wants me to say the YES word. I won't even say that word.
You're talking about
show,
Medicare
Tom.
Advantage here, right?
Yes. That's what it all boils down. It's another Medicare Advantage scam, but coming to us in a different way.
Yeah.
So please, everyone, be aware. You know,
okay.
There are different scams out there, but it's the same game.
So now they're calling it the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah. Well, this is one, again, I think, Tom, you're going to hear a lot more about this next coming year than you've heard probably for the last decade, because we're all hearing it from our constituents. We are now more organized than ever. We are pressing the administration on this issue. And at the end of the day, only Medicare is Medicare, and we're really going to try to do everything we can to protect that program as much as we're protecting Social Security. So be ready to hear more.
If you have not seen it, you need to get your hands on the booklet that the Center for Medicare Services mails out to everybody on Medicare every year. It's basically a 40, 50-page ad for Medicare Advantage.
Yeah, and the thing is, I can't tell you how many constituents call us, Tom, whether it be denied care and then they have to appeal and it's delayed care, which can be deadly. It's people who then have signed up for Medicare Advantage and then want to get off of it, and it costs a penalty to be able to do that, to get back onto Medicare, and that becomes a problem. We just hear so many stories. We just posted a really good video on our social media, Tom. If you get a chance, please repost it.
We'll check it out. Congressman Pocan, thank you so much for dropping by today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Look forward to everyone in a few weeks.
There you go. Always great having you on. Congressman Mark Pocan. We'll be back. Has corporate personhood delivered America to the brink of dictatorship? What do you think? No? I'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at ThomHartmann.com. So check them all out at ThomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com.
We say fight back!
Well, we're moving along with the pledge drive. Things seem to be going well. You know, knock wood. It's always tough in the beginning, and you know, I know that we're a little behind where we like to be, but we're, you know, people are responding, and I'm very grateful to that. I don't yet have the votes in on the clips. Do you want clips during these fundraising pledges, or would you rather just hear me blither on about, or talk? You know, I shouldn't use pejoratives. You know, talk about free speech TV. I mean, I think we all know how cool free speech TV is and how important it is. So the clip I have for you today, and then, you know, tomorrow we'll assess these and decide whether to continue doing them, is just a little over 2 minutes. It's from Dwight Eisenhower's December 1960 farewell address to the nation, or maybe it was in January of 61. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was his farewell address. His famous military-industrial complex speech. Here it is.
Or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Isn't that remarkable? They just don't talk like that anymore. Anyway, today is day 2, or day 3, I guess. It's Wednesday of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive. It only lasts 2 weeks, very truncated, very short. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, you've got your choice of the very cool Free Speech TV keychain or the tote bag. With a $120, with a $75 gift, there's the Free Speech TV mug. The $120 gift, you have your choice, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author. That would be me. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV blanket. And with a $1,000 gift, you can get all 9 books so far, autographed by the author of the Hidden History series, which makes just a dynamite gift. Or, you know, looks really cool on your shelf. Or sign up for the meet and greet here once we finally figure out how to do those things. We're still a little nervous. Free Speech TV is a vital and important resource for frankly, all of us, I think, you know, for our nation. It's critical that people be well informed. Some comments that people have made as they've called in or left comments over at freespeech.org. The number, of course, to call in 877-378-8669. Some of the comments, Charles in Illinois, he said he would probably still be in college if he had professors like Thom Hartmann who had a gift for teaching. Well, thank you, Charles. Anthony in Texas said, I'm so fascinated by Thom Hartmann and proud y'all have this network. I mostly watch left-wing TV and really delighted that I found Free Speech TV. It's quite a contribution to America. I agree. Not so much about me, but Free Speech TV is a contribution to America. It's true. Janice in Washington said, "I've been a loyal watcher for some time. I will catch Tom and Randy. Randy and I used to be on Air America together, and I love Randy. She's brilliant. She's a great colleague. When I turn on in fact, I introduced her to Free Speech TV. When I turn on my TV, it's always on Free Speech TV. I like the ads where you talk about free speech. They're very charming," writes Janice in Washington. Margaret in Massachusetts said, "Thom Hartmann has a wonderful knowledge, and I'm amazed when I learned from him so much we don't hear from the mainstream media. He's a reliable resource, and I'm glad I found it." And William in Illinois says, "We feel Thom Hartmann is very knowledgeable about history, and I feel it's the best place to make our donation." Tim in Wisconsin, "Free Speech TV is vital, important, and should be supported." Amen. So please, right now, go to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Whether it's ongoing support every single month or a one-time gift, please do it now.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. In today's Daily Take over at HartmannReport.com, I wanted to reprise an issue that every year, or maybe even once or twice a year, or 3 times a year, I really feel the need to bring up. And that is this issue of corporate personhood, this idea that corporations have rights as human beings under the Bill of Rights, under the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. And, we now have corporations that are claiming the First Amendment right of free speech. There's a David Sirota's newsletter, thelever.com, I think is the website this morning, had a brilliant rant about how AT&T is funding election deniers and traitors, basically. Excuse me. That's the First Amendment. The gun companies are claiming the Second Amendment and have enriched it, by their contributions to the Supreme Court. I don't hear much about the Third Amendment. You don't quarter soldiers. But the Fourth Amendment, the right to privacy, you've got corporations. DuPont, for example, sued the Environmental Protection Agency when they flew a plane over a factory to detect benzene emissions and said, "You violated our right to privacy. You can't do that without a search warrant." And because, we're a person. And so now, if the government wants to inspect a company's books or inspect a company for pollution or something, they've got to get a search warrant. The Fifth Amendment, protections against taking, and more importantly, the Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination. Corporations have actually declared that they're going to take the Fifth. I mean, just this idea that these rights that are supposed to be specifically for human beings are being applied to corporations. And of course, the First Amendment right of free speech, which is being used to say, I can buy politicians, that 5 corrupt Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court have interpreted as the legal right to bribe politicians. This is criminal stuff. And not just that, this is what brought us Donald Trump. Had we not allowed dark money to go nuts, then we wouldn't have Donald Trump. And we had a pretty good handle on this in the mid-1970s. After it came out that, Spiro Agnew resigned his vice presidency in the Nixon administration because he was about to be convicted of bribery when he was governor and when he was vice president, when he was governor in Jersey and when he was vice president. Agnew resigned, and of course, Jerry Ford got put in there. But then Nixon, when Nixon went down, we discovered that Nixon had taken a $500,000 bribe from the milk lobby and had taken a $1 million bribe from Jimmy Hoffa. And that was to get him off a criminal deal. That was to influence the Department of Justice. So as a result of that, you had the Church Commission hearings, and there were several other congressional hearings. Many of them, theoretically were around Watergate and all that kind of stuff. But the larger frame in many cases was funding of elections. And out of that, in 1974 and 1975, we got some really good government laws. We got federal funding of elections, the little checkoff box on your taxes. Now, I'm not sure if it only happened at that time, but it was certainly highlighted at that time. Where you can put money into the presidential election fund. I'm pretty sure that precedes that, but But, limits on dark money, campaign contribution disclosure rules, all kinds of really good government legislation got passed in the mid-'70s, and then the Supreme Court went after it. And that was in 1976 with the Buckley decision, and in 1978 with the Bellotti decision, and then in 2010 with the Citizens United decision. And the rubric that they've used for all these things, the gimmick, the frame that they use to justify saying that corporations should be able to own politicians has always been corporate personhood, that corporations are persons. And this is a doctrine that has never actually been adjudicated before the U.S. Supreme Court. I know in 1815, they recognized Dartmouth College as having a foreign corporation at the time, in fact, as having a legal right, a legal standing to sue and be sued, a certain type of personhood. But that's not the same thing as saying that you've got a First Amendment right to free speech. That, in large part, is more of the modern era, but it was set up by this 1886 case, Southern Pacific Railroad versus, what was the county? I'll have to look it up. But anyway, there we go. Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Thank you very much, me. I wrote a book about I have so many Supreme Court cases in my head. Anyhow, I wrote a book about this that was published a little more than a decade ago. It's called Unequal Protection. It's been updated twice now. And when we were doing the research for that book, or when I was doing actually a friend of mine, Dave DeBronkart, helped out a little bit too. And when we were doing the research for that book, one of the things that we found was, first of all, we discovered that, it wasn't the Supreme Court decision in the Santa Clara County case that led to the corporate personhood. In fact, the Supreme Court in that 1886 case decided against the railroad. The railroad lost the case. And their whole argument was, we're a corporation, we're a person, we should not have to pay the same, we should pay the same tax rate as everybody else. We should have protection under the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. They ruled against them. But in the head note, the court reporter, a guy by the name of John Chandler Bancroft Davis, whose father had been the governor of Massachusetts, he was kind of, political royalty in the United States. And he was the former president of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. John Chandler Bancroft Davis wrote a head note, apparently at the urging of Justice Stephen Field. Another thing we found in the archives when we researched this was the correspondence between some of the big railroads and Justice Field, basically saying that if he would help them out with corporate personhood, they would help him out with free transportation, and they would support his candidacy for president in the 1896 or 1898 election, whatever year the election was held that year. And, so basically he was being bribed. And Bancroft Davis, John Chandler Bancroft Davis, wrote in this head note that Justice Waite, Morrison Remick Waite, the Chief Justice of the United States, in this case, had said, nobody's debating here whether corporations are persons. We all agree they are. End of discussion. And it was completely out of context. What Waite was saying was, yes, corporations can sue and be sued. They have, they have a type of personhood. It's a personhood that non-humans have, but they're not human beings. And so, but this has been interpreted, or, basically what happened was everybody pointed at it and said, oh, look at that. The Supreme Court said corporations are persons. And then the Supreme Court itself quoted that head note, and has on a number of occasions, including in Citizens United, they quote that head note, and said, see, here's the proof. Morrison Waite said this back in 1886, when he didn't say that, or he did say that, but not in that context. He didn't mean that. And so we even found this letter from Waite, Chief Justice Waite, to Court Clerk Davis, saying, I think you captured the essence of what we talked about, but we did not respond to the constitutional issue. In other words, we never ruled on corporate personhood, on whether the 14th Amendment protects corporations as well as human beings. We never ruled on that. And I reproduced the actual letter in Waite's handwriting on Supreme Court letterhead to Davis in the article today that you can find over at hartmannreport.com. So, as they say, documentary proof. But I think it's important that we remember that if it wasn't for that decision and the subsequent decisions, all of them made by corrupted members, you know, the more recent ones, Buckley, Bellotti, and Citizens United, by members of the court who were either openly on the take, like Clarence Thomas, or total right-wing ideologues, you know, like Lewis Powell, who actually wrote the Bellotti decision in 1978, that were it not for these decisions, we would not have Donald Trump, and you would not have today's Republican Party. You would not have a party that is entirely in the bag with big corporations, that denies climate change on behalf of the fossil fuel industry, that is just fine with having regular school shootings in America on behalf of the weapons industry, that is to do anything about, you know, how destructive Medicare Advantage is because they're owned by the insurance industry, who refuses to do anything about drug prices because they're owned by big pharma, who won't take on the airlines because they're owned by the big airlines. I mean, you know, it just goes on and on and on. The GOP, you know, as Harry Truman famously said, is, you know, the Democratic Party is the People's Party, and the Republican Party is the party of the rich and powerful, and always has been and always will be. And here we are. And in large part, it's been made possible by these decisions of the Supreme Court, these corrupt decisions of the Supreme Court. And, you know, we can restore our human rights by, we can amend the Constitution, we could have Congress overturn the Supreme Court decision, we could pack the Supreme Court, add to the Supreme Court, and maybe get them to reverse some of these terrible decisions. But we have to do something, because this corporate personhood idea, and by the way, I just signed a fundraiser for one of the Move to Amend, one of the really great organizations that's out there trying to do. You may not have received it in your email box yet. You know, that's trying to do work on this area, but there's people working on this stuff, and it's important work, because this is what we need to do to bring America back from the brink, among many other things, obviously. But this, I don't want this to fall off the radar screen.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. David in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Hey, yeah, this was first a couple of things. First of all, something I've not heard anybody say is that Social Security money that goes to Social Security recipients goes to the local economy. It doesn't go into a bank account in Panama. It doesn't go to the Isle of Man. It goes directly into the community. Same with pensions. This was an argument point. Long ago, back in the 90s, from Reagan.
Yeah, most people don't even understand the importance of local economies, you know, which is what you're speaking to, David.
Exactly. And we have this parasitic capitalism that is it's embodied by the idea of these big box stores that come in, and all the local businesses, you know, Walmart's, of course, the famous in Nowata, Oklahoma, and Walmart wiped out the entire business district of Nowata, and then later on, a few years later, Walmart decided that wasn't a big enough market, so they pulled out. So now everybody has to drive to Bartlesville.
Oh my!
So you know, it's but. Their business model is they extract more money out of the local community than they pay in wages and local taxes.
Right. Every night in every Walmart store all around America, somebody pushes a button, and all the money from that community goes right down to Bentonville, Arkansas.
That's also, but that's not just Walmart now. Let's remember,
McDonald's
Lowe's,
sends it to Chicago.
Home Depot, every single name brand corporation that we have now. A perfect example here in Tulsa was Okie Bug, was a local fishing place where you'd buy reels, rods, and everything. Well, Broken Arrow gives Bass Pro $35 million plus property tax abatements to build this two-story. And I'm sure if Okie Bug had gotten $35 million, they could have turned themselves into a two-story with an aquarium and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, this is a problem and plus now we have this added pressure that Congress has allowed these corporations, not only with the mergers and monopolization, but that also the commodification of everybody.
Yeah.
We're no longer citizens. And we used to be consumers, but now we're not even consumers, we're commodities.
Or data points that can be sold.
And what's not just that, I have 30 years in oil and gas. I have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
Because most of those were 3-month and 6-month contracts. I used to think, I could work from within, pull CO2 out of the gas stream with the demethanizer. I'd pull it, I got to be a senior piping designer. And I was in the meetings when they were planning the Mark West or the Targa or one of the, and, I'm sitting here, okay, we're already temperature pressure. Instead of venting to atmosphere, let's drop it down to a liquefaction pump. Let the chemical engineers worry about what to do with all the stuff.
Right.
No, we're not going to do that. Can we bring it to the client? No, we're not going to bring it to the client. Can we at least put a flange so they don't have to take down the plant to make a modification? Just do your job.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But $1 spent in a local economy that goes to a local store that puts that money in a local bank that loans out mortgage money to local home buyers. $1 spent in a local economy over the course of a year typically becomes about $1.44 for the economy, for the community, because of that cycling. $1 spent at a Walmart in a local community becomes, as I recall, in the high 70s, maybe 80 cent range by the end of the year. This is what you're talking about, David. David, I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but thank you. Excellent points all. Well made. 21 minutes past the hour. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out. "22 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So Speaker Mike Johnson says that he wants to blur out the faces of people in the 40,000 hours of January 6th video that he's going to release so that they can't be prosecuted by the Department of Justice. Now, his office has come out and clarified that he didn't really mean that. He meant so that they can't be harassed, which actually is more accurate because we all know what's going on here. The Department of Justice already has this footage. But a substantial number, and my recollection is it's about half, but fact check me, look this up because it's been changing from week to week. But there's a robust group of citizen patriots around America who have been taking these pictures from the videos of January 6th, taking face pictures, and combing through social media and other sources to try to find these people so that they can out them. And then when they out them to the FBI, and the FBI prosecutes them. And that's what Mike Johnson's trying to prevent. Which tells us who this guy really is. He's totally in the bag for this corrupt wannabe dictator who last night, Sean Hannity said, come on, Mr. President, Mr. Trump, tell us that you don't intend to become a dictator. And Trump wouldn't say no. He said on day one, yes, or words to that effect. And he claimed that right now Biden's running a dictatorship with his prosecutions of Trump. So, I mean, he's telling us what's going on. And here's this guy, Mike Johnson, who is his complete toady, who was one of the people who was right in the middle of the effort within the House of Representatives, within Congress, to try to overthrow the election. Another one of them was Mike Johnson, or excuse me, was Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan has something to hide, probably a lot to hide, is a verbatim quote from Liz Cheney, who would know. She was the number 3 Republican in the House. And Jim Jordan is, climbing the ladder. But Jordan had all these, well, this is what Liz Cheney said. She said, if you go back and look at the phone records, as well as what he said of himself about his discussions and his conversations with Donald Trump on the 6th, the very significant role he played in the lead up to that, Jordan was clearly one of the masterminds in terms of helping to facilitate Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and of course refused to comply with the Select Committee subpoena. She said he is doing everything he can to help Donald Trump, to do Donald Trump's bidding, and I think that he has so many questions of his own to answer that people just need to go back and look at the record. He is very clearly at the heart of what was an attempt to seize power and overturn an election. I think he has a lot of questions to answer. Yeah, you think? But it's not just Jim Jordan. You have 147 members of Congress who decided that they were going to sign on with Donald Trump after January 6th. After he sat there for 3.5, 4 hours and watched 5 people die and ultimately 3 police officers as well, watching people getting tased, watching people getting beaten, police officers getting beaten, watching this stuff gleefully in the White House. And these members of Congress said, we're down with that, we're okay with that. And now they're trying to reinvent history. Now you've got Mike Johnson. They're going to be looking through these. The reason that they're releasing these 40,000 hours of tape is so that people can cobble together a narrative and say, this is the actual footage. This is going to be like, like the conspiracy theory videos that you can find all over the internet, whether it has to do with JFK or 9/11 or whatever it may be, where they take, little bits and pieces of real video footage and say, hey, look at this. Doesn't this look like something else? And it's, and it's going to be lies. And Mike Johnson knows it's going to be lies, but he's setting it up. He's making it possible. He's moving this forward, and he's doing it in a way, to basically make sure that there won't be any holding to account by the citizen patriots for these folks. It's incredible. All right, let's pick up your phone calls on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. It's 27 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Well, we're moving along with the pledge drive. Things seem to be going well. Knock wood, it's always tough in the beginning. And, I know that we're a little behind where we like to be, but we're, people are responding, and I'm very grateful to that. I don't yet have the votes in on the clips. Do you want clips during these fundraising pledges, or would you rather just hear me blither on about, or talk, I shouldn't use pejoratives, talk about free speech TV. I mean, I think we all know how cool free speech TV is and how important it is. So the clip I have for you today, and then, tomorrow we'll assess these and decide whether to continue doing them, is just a little over 2 minutes. It's from Dwight Eisenhower's December 1960 farewell address to the nation, or maybe it was in January of 61. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it was his farewell address, his famous military-industrial complex speech. Here it is.
Or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Isn't that remarkable? They just don't talk like that anymore. Anyway, today is day 2, or day 3, I guess. It's Wednesday of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive. It only lasts 2 weeks, very truncated, very short. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, you've got your choice of the very cool Free Speech TV keychain or the tote bag. With a $75 gift, there's the Free Speech TV mug. The $120 gift, you have your choice, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author. That would be me. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV blanket. And with a $1,000 gift, you can get all 9 books so far, autographed by the author of the Hidden History series, which makes just a dynamite gift, or, looks really cool on your shelf. Or sign up for the meet and greet here once we finally figure out how to do those things. We're still a little nervous. All that said, Free Speech TV is a vital and important resource for frankly, all of us, I think, for our nation. It's critical that people be well informed. Some comments that people have made as they've called in or left comments over at freespeech.org. The number, of course, to call in 877-378-8669. Some of the comments, Charles in Illinois, he said he would probably still be in college if he had professors like Thom Hartmann who had a gift for teaching. Well, thank you, Charles. Anthony in Texas said, I'm so fascinated by Thom Hartmann and proud y'all have this network. I mostly watch left-wing TV and really delighted that I found Free Speech TV. It's quite a contribution to America. I agree. Not so much about me, but, Free Speech TV is a contribution to America. It's true. Janice in Washington said, I've been a loyal watcher for some time. I would catch Tom and Randy. Randy and I used to be on Air America together, and I love Randy. She's brilliant. She's a great colleague. When I turn on in fact, I introduced her to Free Speech TV. When I turn on my TV, it's always on Free Speech TV. I like the ads where you talk about free speech. They're very charming, writes Janice in Washington. Margaret in Massachusetts said, Thom Hartmann has a wonderful knowledge, and I'm amazed what I learned from him. So much we don't hear from the mainstream media. He's a reliable resource, and I'm glad I found it. And William in Illinois says, we feel Thom Hartmann is very knowledgeable about history, and I feel it's the best place to make our donation. Tim in Wisconsin, Free Speech TV is vital, important, and should be supported. Amen. So please, right now, go to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution, whether it's ongoing support every single month or a one-time gift. Please do it now. Hey, if you like the rants that I open the show with every day, they're typically published over at hartmannreport.com. Check it out. One of the grand questions that political scientists have been scratching their heads over for years in America is, why do right-wing billionaires fund anti-black history? movements? Why are they pouring money into these people? Why are they funding anti-trans movements? I mean, what does this have to do with being a billionaire? Well, it turns out it has a lot to do with it, and here's why. Almost 30 million Americans lack health insurance. 37 million of us live in dire poverty. 1 in 5 of us are illiterate. A quarter of Americans suffer from a diagnosable mental illness and can't get treatment. 316 people are shot every day in America. 44% of us carry student debt. And the billionaires don't want to pay income taxes to deal with any of these problems of society. That's the real issue. If they can get us fighting with each other over black history or over trans people or kids, they win. Then we're not talking about taxing them, raising their taxes to where they should be. There's a whole rant about this over at hartmanreport.com that you can read and see all the stats and all the hot links. Check it out. And welcome back. Let's pick up your calls. What's on your mind today? Lowell in Salem, Oregon. Hey, Lowell, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I'm so glad you were raising the issue of the Fourth Amendment in your talk earlier. I wanted to get Democrats to start supporting a repeal of the Patriot Act precisely for that reason.
Amen.
If you'll read, well, you know, unfortunately they re-upped the Patriot Act, you know, in 2021.
Yeah.
Or 2020, whatever the recent one. But if you'll read in the newspaper or the online, a woman in Nebraska was arrested because her private Facebook messages were released to law enforcement, which is one of the requirements of the Patriot Act, is that social media share their data with law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So if this doesn't get people to wake up and start, you know, calling and demanding the Patriot Act be repealed, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lowell. And thanks for that anecdote. I'll have to look that up. But I've been a long-time opponent of the Patriot Act. I think it's, you know, way too broad a brush in some ways, and way too, you know, there's too much power in some areas and not enough, frankly, in others that have to do with potential domestic terrorism. But I'm with you, Lowell. Thank you for the call. Jim in Wonder Valley, California. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Hey, I have some fantastic news that I think Free Speech TV should be announcing on every show for the remainder of the open enrollment period. Medicare is running a test program where they're accepting everybody with no health questions asked. I just got off of Medicare Advantage. I was stuck on it for 2 years.
Hang on just a second, Jim. Medicare never asks for health questions. So if you've
No, I mean, I was on Medicare Advantage.
Right.
Last year, I tried to get off of it, and because I had disability, the guy that was trying to help me, he said, well, basically, I would automatically get rejected, and I tried to get on it, and they rejected me last year.
No, you wouldn't get rejected by Medicare. You would get rejected by the Medigap insurance company that sells the policy for the 20%.
Whatever. I just signed up for Medicare.
Oh, yes, that's great. That's great.
I got off of Medicare Advantage. I'm in California, but I think this is a Medicare program that might be nationwide. So people that are on Medicare Advantage can you hear me?
I can. I would encourage you to double check and make sure, because there are, to the best of my knowledge, there are no special Medicare programs, and you may be being lied to by a Medicare Advantage guy.
I'm telling you, Tom, there is. I called the people that help you sign up for Medicare. First, I called up. I had an Anthem Medicare Advantage program, and I was going to switch to a PPO. And I called them up, and they told me there was no PPO available. Right. So I called up the people that help with, you know, you help the.
You're not talking about the Medicare hotline that they advertise on TV. That just gets you to a.
No, I'm talking about the unbiased people that help you choose a Medicare plan.
I didn't know there were any. I know that there are some navigators out there, but they're few and far between and hard to find.
Well, at any rate, I called them up, and they mentioned this plan. I am on Medicare now, or I will be. Okay. I will be January 1st.
Well, call. So, you know, you still have. We're still 1 day before you can undo a mistake, Jim. Just in case my paranoia is right. I hope you're right. Call Social Security.
Okay, Tom, I'm asking you to check on it because I think that you guys should be announcing this.
Well, here's what confuses me, Jim. Medicare never asks about your medical history. They can't.
No.
The only companies that ask about your medical history, and the only companies that will deem you eligible or ineligible, are the insurance companies. So either it's Medicare Advantage or it's a Medigap plan that goes along with real Medicare. If you've got a Medigap plan that is willing to overlook your pre-existing conditions, which is pretty rare. If you've been on Medicare Advantage for more than a year, they can what's called underwrite you. If you've been on for less than a year, they have to take you. And so if you've been on for less than a year, it may be that he's telling you, isn't it wonderful, but in fact they do have to take you anyway. But,
no, Tom, I was on Medicare Advantage for 2 years.
Okay, then
I'm 67.
Then,
I got on it when I was 65.
Then it sounds like your Medigap plan has changed.
The Medigap, there's a special program out there. This is what I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm not believing it, Jim.
Why don't you research?
I will look it up, but I'm telling you, I am wired into this topic like nobody's business. I write about it constantly.
If I go to Medicare.gov right now, it tells me that I'm signed up for this plan. Medicare.gov.
For Medicare, you're signed up for actual Medicare.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Me.
Good. Jim, I'll have to look further into it. Thank you very much for the call. Larry in Ontario, California. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
What's on my mind is that I'm wondering why you are not talking about the most important thing going on in the world right now, and that is the genocide in Gaza.
I think that is an important topic, Larry, and I've talked about it on more than one occasion. It's just not the topic of this particular segment. But yeah, as I've said many times, Israel is overreaching. They're making the same mistake George Bush made. It's going to hurt them terribly, and Netanyahu is doing it for political advantage, in my opinion. John in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
I actually wanted to, I've been listening. This is actually my first time listening to you and first time calling. Listening to your transitions between segments. You want to know why we don't have a single-payer health care program for the U.S.?
I'm happy to hear your opinion.
The 10th Amendment. All powers not specifically reserved for the government, not specifically delegated to the federal government, are reserved for the states. Healthcare is not specifically delegated to the federal government.
Now, that's a matter of interpretation. The Supreme Court could interpret the General Welfare Clause to include health care. They haven't. You're absolutely right. And that was what they used with the Affordable Care Act to say that the mandate that all states take Medicaid, expand Medicaid, was unconstitutional. So, yeah, you're right, John.
But the reason that I called.
That's the reason you called?
Why is it that the United States is expected to carry the supermajority of all the funding for Ukraine? We are trillions of dollars in debt. We're borrowing money from nations that are hostile to us so that we can take care of Ukraine.
We're not borrowing money from nations that are hostile to us. We're selling debt instruments to them. There's a whole world of difference, number one. Number two, Ukraine is a democracy. It's a European democracy, and it's being attacked by an autocrat who is being defended by Donald Trump. And that is the problem, frankly. And that's why Republicans are starting to peel away, is because Trump is telling them to, because he is owned by Vladimir Putin. I think America has an obligation to defend democracies around the world. Rick in Philadelphia. Hey, Rick, what's on your mind today?
What's on my mind is Medicare Advantage.
Yeah.
A couple of curious things. I get all these mailings, and anymore they don't mention zero premium. They don't mention Medicare Advantage. They don't mention Part C. But when you read through the details, you find at the very end it would talk about free dental, free prescription,
right.
Money back on your Social Security check. And I'm finding even in commercials anymore, they don't mention Medicare Advantage. It's actually to the very end, or it's in the bottom of the screen, except where you get the gist of it when they talk about free dental and this kind of thing. And then the other strange part about it is if you call the phone number, you push 1 for this, 2 for that. Number 1 is if you want to find about the great discounted Medicare Advantage plans, push 1, but they don't say 0. They don't tell you how great it is. They just say you want to find out about great.
Well, and the one thing they never tell you is that, a million times a year they say to people, no, I'm not going to pay for that. And when people appeal it, over 80% of the time they win their appeals, meaning that those denials of care and denials of services which the Medicare Advantage companies are literally famous for, are not appropriate, are not reasonable to begin with. In fact, there was an article I don't recall if it was ProPublica or just in one of the mainstream newspapers 2 weeks ago, as I recall, suggesting that I believe it's the largest, one of the largest of the health insurance companies is now using AI to deny health care benefits to people on Medicare Advantage programs, which is just nuts. So, Rick, go ahead.
It's like the kids at the back door to try and tell you something.
Yeah, no, it's true. They're pushing these scams like no tomorrow because the sign-up period ends on the 7th, and today is the 6th. I guess that's tomorrow. We'll be right back. It's 44 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Right back with more of your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stay with us. And welcome back. Carol in St. Charles, Missouri. Hey, Carol, thanks for watching us on Free Speech. What's on your mind today?
Well, it's really Chesterfield, but that's okay.
Okay, I'll fix that. So what's up?
I'm really calling about Medicare, but I can't help musing while waiting about wondering which corporation's going to be the first one to run for president since they're persons.
There you go. I like the old bumper sticker. I'll believe a corporation is a person when Texas executes one.
That's good. Anyway, about Medicare, it's so much worse, I think, than we even thought before. The Medicare handbook, I agree. It seems like it's hawking Medicare Advantage plans for quite a bit, but I spent 3 months trying to get myself out of a forced Medicare Advantage plan from my state group employer. Once retired, they ended up switching us all to Medicare Advantage. Well, so I went directly to Medicare, made an account online, and spent a good hour talking to somebody directly at Medicare, and finally, I was able to get myself out through a loophole. However, after doing all that, I started getting email after email from Medicare.gov hawking Medicare Advantage plans.
Right.
I mean, they don't mention Medicare or Medigap, nothing. But they keep telling me, there are 44 Medicare Advantage plans available in your area, including 3 new plans. And I'm getting these weekly.
Wow. You need to, number one, send a note about that to Congressman Ro Khanna and Congressman Mark Pocan and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. They're all over this.
I tried to find out where I could forward these emails to them, and I can't find an email address.
Oh, they have their email contact information's on their website. So it's pocan.house.gov, Schakowsky.house.gov, and yes, you won't get
Yeah, but they don't post emails.
No, I believe most of them do, actually.
Well, I couldn't find them. I mean, this was before I called you, so...
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll call their number and see if I can get an email address.
That's a good idea.
But anyway, I want somebody to know this. This is so inside Medicare itself.
Well, you wonder, is it actually Medicare sending that out, or is it somebody spoofing it as Medicare? Is it one of the big trade associations or one of the big insurance companies? And, I would have to look at the email very carefully, and because just because it says, I mean, I get emails that say they're from my bank, and I know they're not. Right, I know it's some guy trying to get me to click on it.
I've looked at the source information, and they do seem absolutely legit. And it's only since I, spoke with Medicare and created my Medicare account online that I started getting these.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, we've got a problem. I mean, ever since the Bush administration, ever since Medicare Advantage in its current form was invented, every administration, Democratic and Republican, has been promoting Medicare Advantage. And now the Biden administration is still promoting Medicare Advantage. They're starting to get some pushback from his members but we need to push a whole lot harder. Carol, thank you for the call. Thanks for the information. That's amazing. It's 49 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay tuned. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out. "51 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. Bob in upstate New York. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Good. What's up?
I found you on YouTube a couple weeks ago, and I like you because you research things and
Thank you.
Just don't talk off the top of your head.
Well,
you were talking a couple weeks ago about Trump supporters, Trump voters, having a common thread of racism in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, because I have a lot of friends who I've had over the years, golfing buddies for 20, 30 years, that I'm shocked that they would vote for Trump in 2024. I got to say, I voted for him in 2016.
Mm-hmm. Everybody can make a mistake, Bob. You're forgiven.
I hope so, because I think about it every day. I'm so obsessed with this guy. So to a person, these few people that I talk to say that they hate, despise, words like that, like I use with Trump. They come back and they say, I hate Democrats to the point where I would never, ever vote for one.
Yeah, these are people who are... I'm sorry.
Are these people, by saying that, do you think that people that say that lean towards racism?
I don't think it's that simple.
Is it one and the same?
I think that, what you're hearing is people regurgitating back to you, feeding back to you what they're hearing on right-wing hate radio, Fox News, Newsmax, these right-wing billionaire-owned networks. And those hosts and those networks are literally peddling hate, and hate of Democrats is right up at the top of the list. Because
but they felt, I've come to find out that they've hated Democrats all their life. We just never talked about it amongst ourselves.
Well, then that may, if it goes back to the 60s, then you know what they're hating on, and that is the Civil Rights Act. We
were all born in the late 50s.
Yeah.
And we've talked politics all our life, and I'm a conservative. I've voted Republican except for Clinton and Obama. So I lean that way, but obviously,
Yeah, this is a problem today. It really is.
a problem.
We can debate economic policy, but we can't debate democracy.
I don't even want to talk to these people anymore. I'm so obsessed with this guy that can these people be good people that I've made friends with?
Oh, I think it's entirely possible that good people can be deluded. Good people can be, can hold horrible views. It doesn't mean that I would want to hang out with them. Maybe they're nice to their kids and they pat their dog. But hey, if they're embracing racism, or if they're promoting hate, or if they're, for that matter, promoting dictatorship in the United States, there are lines that we all have to draw. That's where I would draw my lines. I mean, I get it. Other people draw their lines in different places, but yeah. Bob, I need to move along, but thank you for the call, and I hope we have future conversations. Thank you very much. Julie in Rockaway Beach, Oregon. Hey, Julie, what's up?
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Just fine.
Okay. I just wanted to make a comment on some of the Republican politicians today, and then I'll take my comments off the air. And I just want to say that I think that everyone who is in a way complicit in Trump's schemes has everything to lose if he loses, and that's why they're doubling down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just such a huge conspiracy that's why we have to get to the root of it. And so,
right.
I mean,
they're afraid that if Trump gets convicted of trying to overthrow the government, that the federal government, the next group that they'll look after, that they'll go after, are the people who were complicit with Trump, the people who helped Trump. And that's people like, Mike Johnson and Jim Jordan.
Exactly. Exactly. And those are all the co-conspirators that, Smith keeps referring to. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. People seem to be confused why they're doing it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And it just seems so clear to me.
I think you're absolutely right. Thank you, Julie. Patrick in Sherman Oaks, California. Hey, Patrick, what's up?
Yes, hi, Tom. I was calling because I was wondering what your thoughts on that the law that allows for the president to have Secret Service, that it be amended or modified in some manner to say that if you are convicted of a felony and in prison, then you will not be allowed to Secret Service, and that penal system will handle your.
Yeah. I think the solution is to do what they did with Rudolf Hess. They had this old prison, Spandau prison in Germany, that was about to be decommissioned, and they decided to keep it alive, or at least one wing of it alive, just to hold one man. And Rudolf Hess lived in that prison until the day he died. He was Hitler's right-hand man, and the guy who introduced him in '37 at the Nuremberg rally, if you've ever seen that Leni Riefenstahl film, Triumph of the Will. And I could see, finding a federal prison facility or even a state prison facility that the federal government could buy that is about to be decommissioned or replaced, and just, letting Trump have the whole place. That way he won't have people to hang out with, he won't have the social interactions, he won't have, gangs that he can crank up, he won't have, et cetera. I think the Rudolf Hess treatment is what he deserves. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I haven't thought of that. That's very interesting, but I was
and the Secret Service could run it.
That the taxpayers don't pay for the Secret Service.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, I get it.
We don't continue to pay for that and let the penal system handle them. I also think that he'll freak out more.
Yeah.
Knowing that, and they can't be grandfathered in for that.
I just can't. If he was in with general population, I don't know where it would go. Anyhow, Patrick, thank you for the call. Interesting, thought-provoking question. On the other side of the break, Dr. Pepper, David Pepper. I should say doctor. He does have a JD. He is but anyhow, David Pepper is going to be with us about the damning timeline of Ohio's biggest scandal. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at ThomHartmann.com. So check them all.com and HartmannReport.com.
We say fight back.
Well, we're moving along with the pledge drive. Things seem to be going well. You know, knock wood. It's always tough in the beginning, and you know, I know that we're a little behind where we like to be, but we're, you know, people are responding, and I'm very grateful to that. I don't yet have the votes in on the clips. Do you want clips during these fundraising pledges, or would you rather just hear me blither on about, or talk? You know, I shouldn't use pejoratives. You know, talk about free speech TV. I mean, I think we all know how cool free speech TV is and how important it is. So the clip I have for you today, and then, you know, tomorrow we'll assess these and decide whether to continue doing them, is just a little over 2 minutes. It's from Dwight Eisenhower's December 1960 farewell address to the nation. Or maybe it was in January of 61. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it was his farewell address. His famous military-industrial complex speech. Here it is.
Or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Isn't that remarkable? They just don't talk like that anymore. Anyway, today is day 2, or day 3, I guess. It's Wednesday of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive. It only lasts 2 weeks, very truncated, very short. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, you've got your choice of the very cool Free Speech TV keychain or the tote bag. With a $75 gift, there's the Free Speech TV mug. The $120 gift, you have your choice, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author. That would be me. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV blanket. And with a $1,000 gift, you can get all 9 books so far, autographed by the author of the Hidden History series, which makes just a dynamite gift. Or, you know, looks really cool on your shelf. Or sign up for the meet and greet here once we finally figure out how to do those things. We're still a little nervous. All that said, Free Speech TV is a vital and important resource for frankly, all of us, I think, you know, for our nation. It's critical that people be well informed. Some comments that people have made as they've called in or left comments over at freespeech.org. The number, of course, to call in, 877-378-8669. Some of the comments, Charles in Illinois, he said he would probably still be in college if he had professors like Thom Hartmann who had a gift for teaching. Well, thank you, Charles. Anthony in Texas said, I'm so fascinated by Thom Hartmann and proud y'all have this network. I mostly watch left-wing TV and really delighted that I found Free Speech TV. It's quite a contribution to America. I agree. Not so much about me, but Free Speech TV is a contribution to America. It's true. Janice in Washington said, "I've been a loyal watcher for some time. I will catch Tom and Randy. Randy and I used to be on Air America together, and I love Randy. She's brilliant. She's a great colleague. When I turn on in fact, I introduced her to Free Speech TV. When I turn on my TV, it's always on Free Speech TV. I like the ads where you talk about free speech. They're very charming." Writes Janice in Washington. Margaret in Massachusetts said, "Thom Hartmann has a wonderful knowledge, and I'm amazed what I learned from him. So much we don't hear from the mainstream media. He's a reliable resource, and I'm glad I found it." And William in Illinois says, "We feel Thom Hartmann is very knowledgeable about history, and I feel it's the best place to make our donation." Tim in Wisconsin, "Free Speech TV is vital, important, and should be supported." Amen. So please, right now, go to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Whether it's ongoing support every single month or a one-time gift, please do it now.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the third hour of our program. On the line with us is David Pepper, the lawyer, writer, political activist, former elected professor at the University of Cincinnati College of Law, served as chair of the Ohio Democratic Party between 2015 and 2021. His website's laboratoriesofautocracy.com, and I subscribe to his newsletter, Pepperspectives, which is davidpepper.substack.com, and I strongly encourage you to do the same. It's free and it's amazing. His Twitter handle is @DavidPepper. David, welcome back to the program. Your newsletter a day or two ago really tagged me. I mean, really, I thought, wow, I want to share this with my listeners. And so I passed it along to Sean and asked her to get you on the program here. And so tell us about this new, we have a problem, the damning timeline of Ohio's biggest bribery scandal.
Sure. And for those from beyond Ohio, which most of your listeners, one of my themes is that going alongside the attack on democracy in states like Ohio is always corruption. They go together. And that's why I try and emphasize that. So, yeah, in Ohio, we had the biggest bribery scandal in our history play out in recent years. And it essentially was politicians handing over to one major utility company the regulatory body that oversees that utility company. And what I was trying to show through this timeline I put together in the video on the Substack is the company basically paid the guy who ended up being the head of the regulatory agency $4 million on the way in to him being in charge. And ultimately, that agency is what allowed the biggest bribery scandal in the history of Ohio to take place. But what I try to explain is when you look at the timeline of them forking over $4 million to this guy, it was weeks before he even applied to be the head of that agency.
Whoa.
And so the question is, how were they so confident that the guy they were essentially bribing, and they've admitted it was a bribe, was going to be in charge? And that's when you look closely at their schedules and the schedule of the newly elected governor and lieutenant governor. Well, it's because they were meeting with the elected officials who made that decision at the precise same time. They knew full well the fix was in. And in a state where people are so confused about corruption because it gets complicated, what I'm trying to do is show in the end how simple the whole scam was.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Here's $4 million. Now we're going to make sure that you're the guy who regulates our industry, do what we want. Essentially, that's what happened, right?
Yeah, and actually, it wasn't in what I sent, but there was a day where he asked for the $4.3 million, and he sent sort of the details of it. And the next day, they said, okay, we're good. In fact, we're going to pay it all at once. And it turns out they had dinner the evening between those 2 days with the governor and with the lieutenant governor.
Oh,
well, of course, they were confident enough to send him. As I said in that Substack, who sends $4.3 million out the door hoping that the guy in a month is going to nail the interview and get the job? Nobody. Right. They clearly, in that dinner between the day that the sort of was discussed and the day they agreed to it, clearly got some assurance that this was going to be the guy. And so my hope is that this This guy got indicted the other day, the one who received the $4.3 million. My hope is this is not the end of the process, that he's not the only one involved. If you have evidence that the elected officials put him in there knowing all this was happening, then this should end up being about them even more than this about the guy who got bribed to be in charge of the agency.
So between the time he asked for the money and the time he got the money, in this 24-hour period, he had dinner with, was it, forgive my lack of detailed knowledge of Ohio politics, but was it Mike DeWine and John Husted?
Yeah, the executives did. So he says, I want $4.3 million.
Right.
That night, the executives who were considering the $4.3 million have dinner at a fancy club in Columbus with Mike DeWine and John Husted. And the next day, they send him a message back saying, you're good for the $4.3 million. In fact, we're going to pay it as a lump sum, which they did it about a week and a half or 2 weeks later. So the dinner was with the executives. And obviously, something happened at that dinner to make them very confident that they could send the guy $4.3 million before he even applied for the position or did any interviews.
Why is nobody deposing Mike DeWine and John Husted?
Interestingly, a private suit from LA employees who were share stockholders, they are actually deposing them and subpoenaing them right now as part of a private shareholder suit. That came out the other day. My hope is that when you look at the timeline, that someone along the line, be it the executives or this guy who faces the rest of his life in jail if he doesn't get out of it, that they do start to look into DeWine and Husted. You know, what did you discuss at that dinner? What else did you discuss? Because if you go through the timeline, they had multiple conversations with these executives. Again, somehow something with those conversations clearly made those executives confident enough that the fix was in. They gave a guy $4 million plus long before he even applied for the job. We all need to know exactly what. By the way, a conservative paper the other day, the Toledo Blade, wrote a scathing editorial saying, like I'm saying, we all need to know what Mike DeWine and John Husted were discussing with First Energy about the appointment of this guy who ultimately, you know, is the one indicted the other day for accepting all that money on a condition of helping the company.
Are there specific policy issues at stake here?
Yeah, I mean, everything. As you would know, like everything from how much we pay in rates to a clean energy approach versus just making it, you know, the old stuff that is costing our environment and not making us competitive. This all goes through this agency. And this is a company that didn't want change, didn't want oversight, wants to be able to get whatever it wants. And ultimately, the reason this all came out is because down the road, this agency under this guy's leadership approved legislation and overall approach is very complicated, but in the end gutted a prior Democratic governor's entire sort of 21st century clean and energy plan and took us back to the Stone Ages, all while raising rates. So not only is it in theory, but it turned into the biggest bribery scandal going, but also sent Ohio's energy policy back decades. And this also in the end affects also, are we a competitive state in the 21st century, knowing that wind energy, solar, those jobs for a state like Ohio could be great because we're a manufacturing-based state, but companies like First Energy want to stop any effort to try and move into the 21st century when it comes to a broad-based energy policy. So all that's wrapped up in this. And what happens is you want an agency that's thinking about the public in a long-term vision. And what you get when you have a situation like this is an energy simply doing the bidding of the very interests it's supposed to be regulating. That's the tragedy in the end for the public of this type of thing. And they're paying for it all with higher energy rates.
I've heard people say that Ohio has some of the most corrupt politics in the nation, which is hard to imagine, you know, when you look at like Louisiana or Mississippi or Arkansas. But one of the ways or one of the reasons that Republicans get away with it so easily in Ohio is that Mike DeWine comes across as like, you know, a friendly, thoughtful, nerdy guy. And John Husted is you know, he just doesn't look like evil, you know. Is it really that simple? Or how is it that Ohioans are putting up with this?
I think that for a lot of reasons, this is where I wrote my first book, Laboratories of Autocracy. We generally don't focus on state houses, states, the power they have. And so we don't see the warning signs. I ran against Mike DeWine when he was Attorney General. I ran in 2014, a very bad year for Democrats. I can show you bids that were handled by the Attorney General's office that clearly were corrupt, that were rigged. You know, long-term incumbent vendors to do certain type of work replaced by companies that were created 2 days before the bid that had had meetings with Mike DeWine for a year. So, you know, dressed up in sort of the broader public face is a long pattern in Ohio of pay-to-play, rigged bids. In this case, clearly the fix-in terms of who's regulating. It's kind of become business as usual. And what happens is when enough people do it and it's all they've ever known, it becomes the way the state is run. And that's what's happened. And the tragedy is not just, you know, corruption itself, but the MO of a state that's corrupted like this is literally to give public assets and public goods to private players like First Energy. And what does that end up doing? It means that our public outcomes disintegrate. We aren't competitive in the 21st century. Our rates are higher than they should be. We're giving away public school dollars to for-profit scams. So all along the way, the tragedy is we're all paying for it through our taxes and rates, but we're even more so paying for it through indefensibly poor outcomes because everything's being forked over to the private players at our expense.
Yeah, well, good on you, David Pepper. DavidPepperSubstack.com. Be sure to check it out for highlighting this stuff. Keep on doing it, and I look forward to your next newsletter.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you're amplifying all this stuff. It gets lost too often.
I agree. It so often does, and all over the country, sadly. David.
Thank you.
We'll be back. Yeah. They're going to throw the media in prison. I got to tell you what Kash Patel has to say. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back. And welcome back. Dave in Indian Hills, Colorado. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today?
Hi. This is regarding one horror story. I have a close relative in my family that was on Medicare Advantage, and they have a $100,000 bill over their head.
Oh, really? The Medicare Advantage is refusing to pay?
Yes.
Wow.
So they're fighting that right now.
Yeah.
That's just one point, you know, against the Medicare Advantage. But I just wanted to mention about Part F. I do have one
Part F?
relative in my family besides us that went with the traditional Medicare. We are with the Part F.
Oh, you're talking about Plan F for Medigap. Yeah, I get it.
Plan F for the Medigap, yes. But there's also the G now. I think F has been dropped.
Yeah.
I think people after a certain birth date have to be with G.
Yeah.
But it goes on up to K, L, M, and N.
Oh, really?
And these are, I guess, all plans, authorized by the Medicare, but brokered by a private insurance company. But they have varying amounts that they pay and co-pays and
right.
It's another confusing element, of this Medicare.
I agree.
That they have. That my family member has Plan K, and they were telling me about that Part B. They only pay 50% of the annual amount, whereas ours, it pays everything of A and B.
Right.
So, that's.
So theirs is only paying 50% of that 20%.
Yeah.
It gets confusing, unfortunately.
A and B, like ours, pay on the A and B, the annual, deductibles.
Yeah.
I think our Part F, pays the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have the same plan because I've never had a bill at all since I've been on Medicare for, 7 years, 8 years now. So, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't either, and I found out other people that I know, you know, are on these other variances of the Medigap program.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that they were, you know, there was such a thing.
Yeah.
Until I talked to one of my brothers, you know, that, you know, they have that like Part K.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ones. I don't, you know, I haven't really looked at them carefully since I signed up 8 years ago, so I'm not up to date on the details of the various Medigap plans, other than knowing that I'm really happy with the one I have.
They're out there, and it's, I guess, what it is that they see. My plan. I'm you know, up in 77 right now, my age. So my Part F has gone up quite a bit since I started taking it. At first, it was like about $200 and some, or maybe $100 and some.
Yeah, mine's about $3,000 a year.
Yeah, mine's gone up to about like $315 a month. $315 a month.
I get it. It's still a pretty good price for insurance when a lot of people are paying $15,000 a year for, you know, who are not on Medicare. But excellent points, Dave. Yeah, thanks a lot for calling and sharing your story. Good talking to you. It's 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government, military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. And welcome back. So a couple of things I wanted to share with you. Jack Smith's team has just released information showing that they know that there were people, literally the night of the election, November 4th, 2020, as they were counting the votes in Detroit, when it started looking like the vote was going to go for Biden, that there were people who were, there was one person in particular who was an employee of Donald Trump's campaign rioting in Detroit where they were counting the votes. And people showed up to participate. Now, the police succeeded in keeping them out of the voting counting area, but this was a genuine attempt to create a riot to stop the vote from being counted, because the votes were tending, and this, of course, was Detroit. They were leaning in the direction of Joe Biden. Meanwhile, over on right-wing media, Steve Bannon had Kash Patel on his program. Kash Patel was, deeply embedded in the Trump administration. He's an attorney and an author and all that kind of stuff, but he was also chief of staff for the Department of Defense. So, I mean, this guy has been a very big deal. He had 3 million employees, a $740 billion budget, with $2 trillion in assets. And so Steve Bannon says, we're taking this stuff seriously. We're going to be going after people. And Kash Patel says exactly who they're going to go after. Check this out. This is a clip from Steve Schiff.
This is just not rhetoric. We're absolutely dead serious. We're not. You cannot have a constitutional republic and allow what these deep staters have done to the country. The deep state, the administrative state, the fourth branch of government, never mentioned in the Constitution, is going to be taken apart brick by brick.
We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you.
This is just not rhetoric.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You know, that is frankly very concerning to me. Steve Bannon has millions of people who listen to his podcast. It's one of the major right-wing podcasts. The guy who's got a lot of wealth and power and influence. Kash Patel is no dummy. You need to take these folks seriously when they say what they're going to do. And coming after the media, speaking as part of the media, well, okay. And my last story. This is fascinating. Harvard University had a rather in-depth program researching disinformation on Facebook, in social media broadly, but on Facebook in large part. In fact, much of their work was based on some documents that Frances Haugen, H-A-U-G-E-N, she testified before Congress. This was, what, a year ago, I think, was talking about how Facebook was kind of putting the profit motive above the public good, particularly when it came to teenagers. And the CEO of Whistleblower Aid is pointing out now that Harvard University received a $500 million donation from a foundation run by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife around the same time that they decided to disband or essentially neuter their research group that was looking into how, you know, what kind of damage or misinformation might be happening on the Facebook platform. Now, it's entirely possible this is a coincidence. I mean, you just have to acknowledge that right up front. Mark Zuckerberg is a graduate of Harvard. Actually, I'm not sure if he graduated, but he went to Harvard. I don't know about his wife. And $500 million is a lot of money. Odds are that was planned far in advance. And you know, there may be no connection between these two things, but there's a bunch of whistleblowers, in particular, this one organization, Whistleblower Aid. The CEO, Libby Liu, says whether Harvard acted at the company's discretion or took the initiative on their own to protect Facebook's interests, the outcome is the same. Corporate interests are undermining research and academic freedom to the detriment of the public. And, you know, once again, something that I think is worth paying attention to, shall we say. It's 27 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with your calls on the other side of this break. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the True People's Media. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We're right back with your calls in just a few moments. Well, we're moving along with the pledge drive. Things seem to be going well. You know, knock wood. It's always tough in the beginning, and you know, I know that we're a little behind where we like to be, but we're, you know, people are responding, and I'm very grateful to that. I don't yet have the votes in on the clips. Do you want clips during these fundraising pledges, or would you rather just hear me blither on about or talk? You know, I shouldn't use pejoratives. You know, talk about free speech TV. I mean, I think we all know how cool free speech TV is and how important it is. So the clip I have for you today, and then, you know, tomorrow we'll assess these and decide whether to continue doing them, is just a little over 2 minutes. It's from Dwight Eisenhower's December 1960 farewell address to the nation, or maybe it was in January of 61. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it was his farewell address. His famous military-industrial complex speech. Here it is.
Or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. How to do this? 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Isn't that remarkable? They just don't talk like that anymore. Anyway, today is day 2, or day 3, I guess. It's Wednesday of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive. It only lasts 2 weeks, very truncated, very short. With the $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With the $50 gift, you've got your choice of the very cool Free Speech TV keychain or the tote bag. With a $120, excuse me, with a $75 gift, there's the Free Speech TV mug. The $120 gift, you have your choice, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author. That would be me. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV blanket. And with a $1,000 gift, you can get all 9 books so far, autographed by the author of the Hidden History series, which makes just a dynamite gift, or, you know, looks really cool on your shelf. Or sign up for the meet and greet here once we finally figure out how to do those things. We're still a little nervous. All that said, Free Speech TV is a vital and important resource for frankly, all of us, I think, you know, for our nation. It's critical that people be well informed. Some comments that people have made as they've called in or left comments over at freespeech.org. The number, of course, to call in 877-378-8669. Some of the comments, Charles in Illinois, he said he would probably still be in college if he had professors like Thom Hartmann who had a gift for teaching. Well, thank you, Charles. Anthony in Texas said, I'm so fascinated by Thom Hartmann and proud y'all have this network. I mostly watch left-wing TV and really delighted that I found Free Speech TV. It's quite a contribution to America. I agree. Not so much about me, but, you know, Free Speech TV is a contribution to America. It's true. Janice in Washington said, I've been a loyal watcher for some time. I would catch Tom and Randy. You know, Randy and I used to be on Air America together, and I love Randy. She's brilliant. She's a great colleague. When I turn on in fact, I introduced her to Free Speech TV. When I turn on my TV, it's always on Free Speech TV. I like the ads where you talk about free speech. They're very charming, writes Janice in Washington. Margaret in Massachusetts said, Thom Hartmann has a wonderful knowledge, and I'm amazed what I learned from him. So much we don't hear from the mainstream media. He's a reliable resource, and I'm glad I found it. And William in Illinois says, we feel Thom Hartmann is very knowledgeable about history, and I feel it's the best place to make our donation. Tim in Wisconsin, Free Speech TV is vital, important, and should be supported. Amen. So please, right now, go to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Whether it's ongoing support every single month or a one-time gift, please do it now. From international trade policy to immigration policy to housing, we've got all kinds of topics. The wars between Republicans and Democrats, the Republican efforts to induce fascism in the United States. A great selection of opinions will be found over at HartmannReport.com. So Vivek Ramaswamy, during the first Republican debate, was laying out his vision for America. And by the way, he was the #2 guy in the debate, according to the Washington Post, in which he was arguing that we should basically do away with all of our federal agencies. Really, virtually all of them. Just shut them down and make them go away. He's not the first person to argue this. David Koch, running on the Libertarian ticket in 1980 for vice president, was arguing the same thing. He had a long list of federal agencies he wanted to shut down. This is not an uncommon thing among billionaires, and Ramaswamy is a billionaire. You know, they basically want to take America back to the 1920s, before we had what they call the welfare state. And if they do so, they will turn America into a failed state. They want to make America into something like Haiti or Libya, and that would be a disaster. There's a whole article about it that you can read all the details. It's titled, "Is Vivek Ramaswamy a Different Kind of Republican Cat?" at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour, and picking up your calls here, George in Cutler, Maine. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call and let me have an opportunity to engage in a conversation about Medicare.
Go for it.
I'm your age. I hope I can get my points across. 3 months before I turned 65, I'm your age now, I took a course called Medicare 101, and the person was very informative. Basically told me that as soon as I was old enough, I should sign up for Plan A, the emergency process, and Plan B and Plan D, because they would be I'd be at the base and they'd be as cheap as they're ever going to be.
That's right.
Then she went on to talk about the supplemental programs. I'd like to also say folks should go to mymedicare.gov and set up an account. Everything you want to know is right there.
Yep.
So she discussed the Medigap plans and basically said, what you want to do is look at all the plans that are available, and some of them have left and some of them, have been renewed, and to find out which plan suits you the best, and then go down and find which carrier can provide it for you, to you for the least amount of money.
Right.
They all have to do the same thing under each plan. Nobody can charge you more or less.
Because it's heavily regulated by the original Medicare law, unlike Medicare Advantage, which is largely unregulated.
Absolutely. So what I have now, and have had since I started, is Plan A, B, and I originally bought D separately, but I now have my D thrown in with my Plan N, and I just re-enrolled. I've been in there for 2 years. It'll be my third year enrolled in Plan N.
Yeah.
I don't take any meds, so I have a very low Plan D premium, and so my premium went up from $173 last year to $190 right now as far as the Plan N, and
good.
then I have to throw in another $9 for my Plan D part.
Yeah,
but
I
pay.
You did it the right way, George.
Medicare takeout. Excuse me. Yep, I had Medicare take out the $164.90 for my plan, my Part B, that takes me up to 80% of my costs, and then Plan N takes the extra 20%. I just had a melanoma removed from my arm, and I didn't pay a nickel because I'd already paid in my $226 maximum Part B deductible.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm good to go.
There you go.
And I just the other fellow was talking a few minutes ago. He mentioned about Plan N, and it's a good one. You pay
Most of them are
a little bit, yeah. And F wasn't F to me at the time looked to be too high a deductible and too much for insurance. And I basically I qualify for Medicaid by my income, but I've never wanted to be on a program that I absolutely didn't need, and right now I don't need it. I prefer to pay in like everybody else, and it keeps people from saying, "Hey, you're on the dole."
Yeah,
and that's important to me.
Yeah, it's all a good program, and you went through the process exactly right, and you explained it crystal clear, George. You just did a great public service. George, I need to move along, but thank you for the call and for sharing that. Carol in Lakewood, New Jersey. Hey, Carol, you wanted to talk about Medicare Advantage?
Yes, I do. Firstly, I want to thank you. You're exceptional, and I've listened to you for years.
Thank you.
But I wanted to say I'm 78 years old, and I've been on Medicaid for Medicare for a number of years. However, because of the charges that are charged for Medigap and for the drugs, I decided to go on to Medicare Advantage. I have Clover, and it's a PPO. And right now, I don't pay anything. And if I was on regular Medicare, and you know, I would have to pay for Medigap, and they take out $164 out of my Social Security, plus Medigap. I would be paying way over $300 or $400 a month.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Carol. And it's a real problem. I mean, you know, this is Bernie Sanders has been saying for years. We need to get rid of all these charges. And you know, the sad reality is that now that you're on Medicare Advantage, if you get really sick, you're going to start having your insurance company, because you're no longer dealing with the government now. Now you're dealing with a private for-profit insurance company. You're going to start having them have to pre-approve everything. Every test your doctor wants you to have, every x-ray he wants you to have or she wants you to have, every, you know, whatever it may be, it's going to have to be pre-approved by your insurance company. And you're going to find a lot of the time they're going to say, no, we're not going to pay for that. No, you can't get that treatment. Or, you know, and then you've got to go through an appeals process. And most people don't even know that there is an appeals process, because you've got to go through the state insurance commissioner. So, you know, I wish you well with it, Carol, and I understand that for a lot of people, they just can't afford, you know, real Medicare and a Medigap plan. I totally get it. And I'm glad that you found, you know, or at least you believe you found a Medicare Advantage plan that's not going to rip you off. There are some good ones. They tend to be local. They tend to be nonprofit. They tend to be associated with hospitals, and they tend not to cover you when you're out of the county, frankly. You know, then you're really in trouble. But I wish you well, Carol. I hope it works for you. Jim in Pioneer, Ohio. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I was watching a couple of weeks ago, and you asked about what have Republicans done for the American people, and I've got two.
Okay.
Health savings accounts. If anybody remembers back during the Obamacare debate.
Yeah, they were offering that as an alternative to Obamacare, essentially. You don't need insurance. You just need to put money in a bank.
It's part of Obamacare now.
Yeah.
In fact, all the major insurance companies had picked up on that, and employers now, when you get a job, are contributing hundreds of dollars to a person's health savings account.
In some cases.
And so that's one. And the other is Donald Trump did this. He expanded on Obama's giving veterans access to private health care. He expanded that.
Okay,
so both of these really are expansions on Obamacare.
Yeah. I would have to look up the details on the first one. You know, my criteria is real simple, Jim. Something that was proposed by Republicans, was passed by a Republican majority in the House and Senate, was signed into law by a Republican president. And I'm not sure that either of those things meets any of that criteria.
Okay.
So
that is quite. Oh, but I'd like to say there was an interesting section you had on our energy here in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Northwest Ohio, like 2 miles from Michigan, 14 miles from Indiana. We have our AMP Ohio gives us our energy here. We're really green oriented. We have investments in Paulding, Ohio wind farm, the biggest wind farm in the state so far.
That's great.
A couple decades ago, we installed a third generator in our hydro plant in Defiance, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
We have interests in the big BG wind power plant, and our rates are around 12 cents per kilowatt hour.
Wow, that's remarkable.
And it's really great.
Yep.
I have an electric car. My transportation costs have almost dropped off the charts. You know, I drive by the gas stations and look at the high prices and smile.
That's like $1 gallon gasoline.
Yeah, that's about it. I can drive 25 miles on $1 worth of electricity when I plug it in my garage.
Yeah. Well, that's $1 gallon.
And it wiped out my taxes. First time in my life, adult life, I paid 0 federal taxes because of my
because you bought an electric car. Good on you.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thanks for the story. It's great to hear from you, and I appreciate the information, and that's nice to hear from Ohio. David in Columbus, Ohio, listening to WGRN. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Hi, I guess this is Ohio Day.
I guess. David Pepper brings it out.
Worked a lot with utility reform in Ohio, and one of the things David Pepper didn't mention was that the First Energy people were trying to get big subsidies for their nuclear plants, Perry and Davis-Besse, and also their coal plants, because they're not competitive with wind and solar. In fact, they're losing money. They have to underbid the cost.
Yeah, they're not even competitive with natural gas any longer.
I know. According to Lazard, wind and solar are 2.8 to 4.1 cents per kilowatt hour, and nuclear is like $50 per kilowatt hour. They proposed, Ohio wants to propose something called a modular reactor. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to invest in this. Right. So here we go again.
Well, it still hasn't solved the problem of nuclear waste. You know, they still haven't solved that problem.
I know. It doesn't work.
It's like a zombie industry. You know? we need to drive a stake through it.
Well, what they do is they talk to these Ohio legislators who don't know anything, and then they get them to pledge big subsidies, and they give them $1 million and they get back $50 million. So it's rotten.
It's ever since the Supreme Court, or 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court, legalized political bribery, the best investment you can make in America right now is to buy a politician. David, thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
I shouldn't say you can make. If you are a billionaire and you're trying to get your taxes lowered, or if you're a giant corporation and you're looking for loopholes, it's the best investment they can make. Probably not you and me. And welcome back. Leslie in Oak Park, Illinois. Hey, Leslie. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Happy holidays, all of them. I'm so happy to have read this morning your Hartmann report on corporate personhood and how a scoundrel got it into corporate records. Mm-hmm. And also, I am grateful that you were in the movie Legalizing Democracy quite a few years ago. Mm-hmm. It explained the growth of the legal power that corporations got. But I was surprised that you did not mention, and I'd like to know why you didn't mention, the We the People Amendment, which has been around for a while. And to this year, this 818th Congress, its ID is House Joint Resolution 54. It now has 74 co-sponsors. Could you elaborate on what that is and why you don't mention it?
I don't. Are you talking about the constitutional amendment that establishes that corporations are not persons and money is not speech, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It should have been in my article. A good highlight, Leslie. I've been, we just got back from a long trip, and I've been kind of stoned and my apologies. But you're right, and it's a big deal, and we need more support behind it. So, let me encourage people to check it out, the We the People Amendment.
Would you consider having Greg Coleridge on your program?
Well, for that, you need to have them, anybody who wants to be on our program is welcome to contact our producers. I don't do that, and I certainly don't do it on the air. But, Leslie, thank you for the call. Ken in Lafayette, Colorado. Hey, Ken, what's up?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just want to follow up. You have Jill a while ago. You said he was Republican and his golfing buddies, I believe, or they hate Democrats. And his question to you is, are these people, in his case, his friends, would you consider them racist because they hate Democrats?
And my answer is I honestly don't know the question. I also honestly don't know the answer, but, who knows?
Yeah, well,
could be.
True. But so in my...
You still there, Ken? I think we just lost Ken. All right. Ken, I'm sorry. You're still there? Okay.
Hello?
All right. Try keep going. I lost you for a minute, but you're back.
Okay, sorry. So I'm a person of color, and the pre-Trump, I've had white friends, but he's not a racist. And this is after it says on the national stage, Proud Boys stand back, stand by, and all these S-hole countries, blah, 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 So my response is, for my own bandwidth, my sanity, I have cut all ties with these people.
Yeah, so have I.
The fact that you know, after Trump says all these things on mass television, oh, he's not that bad. You know, me being a minority of color, I knew exactly what's going on, and I just don't have the bandwidth and the patience to even engage in some kind of a civil conversation. There's no way to justify it, in my opinion. But
yeah, no, I share that with you, Ken. I don't. The few people that I know who have become Trumpers over the years, I just don't associate myself with any longer. It's just, you know, life is too short. I'm with you, Ken. Thank you for the call. Spot on. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out. And welcome back. 9 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls. Here's Sandy in Hinsdale, Illinois. Hey, Sandy, what's up?
Well, Tom, much earlier there was a caller praising his Medicare Advantage and seemed to say that you might not know enough about it, Tom, because he had been using it since he turned 65, and it really worked out well for him. With that, I was just going to say I kind of have the same problem, but a discussion with some of my friends in my age group who don't seem to understand still the difference between, Medigap policy and Medicare Advantage. Right. And what I have found is that, and particularly those that want the Medicare Advantage or have it, first of all, they can well afford it, even if they do get sick, but in most cases they're fairly healthy people. So I suppose that what happens is they use it, they can afford it, and they don't look around really for anything else. They don't need to. So I'm not so sure that they're really that educated about Medicare Advantage.
No, this is
so
the problem.
What I wanted to say.
Yeah, and you said it very well. The industry is profiting off the confusion. And the confusion was created intentionally in 2003, or maybe it was 2005, when George W. Bush pushed through the Medicare Reform Act that created the modern incarnation of Medicare Advantage. It used to just be called Medicare Part C, and it was just for exceptions, and it was, kind of this weird little thing that was out there. But it became a real thing in the early 2000s with the Bush administration. And they called it Medicare Advantage intentionally to deceive people, to cause people to think that it was Medicare, when it's not. You're signing up for private insurance from a private company that is not, or is only marginally regulated by the government, and that, they can turn you down and they will insert themselves between you and your doctor if it's going to cost a penny. No matter what it is, they will always insert themselves in there and decide whether or not they're going to pay for your bills. Sandy, thank you. Miss V in Tacoma. Hey, Miss V, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm a disabled senior on limited income, and I went food shopping last night, and I was just totally shocked at how much food has gone up during the open enrollment time for Medicare. And I figured out it's not gas prices, because Crude is at $69.54 a barrel right now. So I figured it out that if the insurance company's offering $1,200 to $4,500 on a grocery flex card for seniors to sign up to Medicare Advantage.
Oh, jeez.
I'm sure the money is from the $36.6 billion in government subsidies that Medicare Advantage companies get.
Yeah.
And I was just appalled at how much it's gone up the last few months.
Yeah. Well, I can't say that that's, you know, my own suspicion is that, you know, giant corporate monopolies have more to do with it than anything else. But excellent point, Ms. V. You may well be right. Danny in Waco, Texas. Hey, Danny, what's on your mind today?
Okay, I was listening to the guy talk about his Medicare Advantage and stuff, but I don't think a lot of people realize, because I actually work with this. When people have like Medicare Advantage, that's a private insurance company, and they base their idea on what they're going to pay or whatever. It's based pretty much on Medicare, whereas Medicare has a 3% overhead to run. When you have to get it, when you go to these private insurance companies, they charge the government.
Oh, it's a 20% overhead.
Running.
They have I think it's
Right.
statutorily, I think the maximum is 23 or 25% that they can basically take.
And see, you remember Bernie Sanders wanted to add, vision and dental to Medicare. Well, they didn't want the insurance companies were fighting that, because then there's no reason to have them. You could just have regular Medicare. Right. And it's just, whenever we compromise with these Republicans, they say, oh, we can't have this because private entities do it better. No, they don't. They just overcharge for it.
Yeah. Well, and that's very much the case. And like I said, if you have real Medicare and nobody ever calls, if your doctor says, you need this test, you need an MRI, nobody has to be called to confirm it or prove it or anything. You just go get the MRI and the Medicare pays for it. But if you've got Medicare Advantage, when your doctor says you need an MRI, you got to go hat in hand to your insurance company and say, may I please have the MRI? And, good chunk of the time they say no. We ain't going to pay for it. So, Danny, thank you. Thank you for validating that. I appreciate the call. Thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, a spectator sport, it requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit ThomHartmann.com.
Well, we're moving along with the pledge drive. Things seem to be going well. Knock wood, it's always tough in the beginning. And, I know that we're a little behind where we like to be, but we're, people are responding, and I'm very grateful to that. I don't yet have the votes in on the clips. Do you want clips during these fundraising pledges, or would you rather just hear me blither on about, or talk? I shouldn't use pejoratives. Talk about free speech TV. I mean, I think we all know how cool free speech TV is and how important it is. So the clip I have for you today, and then, tomorrow we'll assess these and decide whether to continue doing them, is just a little over 2 minutes. It's from Dwight Eisenhower's December 1960 farewell address to the nation, or maybe it was in January of '61. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it was his farewell address, his famous military-industrial complex speech. Here it is.
Or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. This conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Isn't that remarkable? They just don't talk like that anymore. Anyway, today is day 2, or day 3, I guess. It's Wednesday of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive. It only lasts 2 weeks, very truncated, very short. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, you've got your choice of the very cool Free Speech TV keychain or the tote bag. With a $75 gift, there's the Free Speech TV mug. The $120 gift, you have your choice, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author. That would be me. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV blanket. And with a $1,000 gift, you can get all 9 books so far, autographed by the author of the Hidden History series, which makes just a dynamite gift. Or, you know, looks really cool on your shelf. Or sign up for the meet and greet here once we finally figure out how to do those things. We're still a little nervous. All that said, Free Speech TV is a vital and important resource for frankly, all of us, I think, you know, for our nation. It's critical that people be well informed. Some comments that people have made as they've called in or left comments over at freespeech.org. The number, of course, to call in, 877-378-8669. Some of the comments, Charles in Illinois, he said he would probably still be in college if he had professors like Thom Hartmann who had a gift for teaching. Well, thank you, Charles. Anthony in Texas said, I'm so fascinated by Thom Hartmann and proud y'all have this network. I mostly watch left-wing TV and really delighted that I found Free Speech TV. It's quite a contribution to America. I agree. Not so much about me, but, you know, Free Speech TV is a contribution to America. It's true. Janice in Washington said, I've been a loyal watcher for some time. I would catch Tom and Randy. You know, Randy and I used to be on Air America together, and I love Randy. She's brilliant. She's a great colleague. When I turn on in fact, I introduced her to Free Speech TV. When I turn on my TV, it's always on Free Speech TV. I like the ads where you talk about free speech. They're very charming, writes Janice in Washington. Margaret in Massachusetts said, Thom Hartmann has a wonderful knowledge, and I'm amazed when I learned from him so much we don't hear from the mainstream media. He's a reliable resource, and I'm glad I found it. And William in Illinois says, we feel Thom Hartmann is very knowledgeable about history, and I feel it's the best place to make our donation. Tim in Wisconsin, Free Speech TV is vital, important, and should be supported. Amen. So please, right now, go to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution, whether it's ongoing support every single month or a one-time gift. Please do it now.